The Galactic Council's Grand Assembly Hall erupts in chaos as Andorian Ambassador Quinn declares human males the fittest species in the galaxy. Her striking blue skin and elegant antennae quiver with excitement as she delivers this bombshell during her keynote address on interspecies relations. The assembled alien dignitaries react with a cacophony of protests, hisses, and outraged cries. Quinn's controversial statement, based on extensive genetic research and first-hand observations of human physical capabilities, sends shockwaves through the vast chamber. Alien representatives from across the cosmos rise from their seats, gesticulating wildly with appendages of all shapes and sizes. Some species feel threatened, others insulted by the proclamation. In the midst of this uproar, Greg Davis, a ruggedly handsome human diplomat in his mid-30s, finds himself thrust into the spotlight. As the sole human present, he becomes the impromptu representative of his entire species. The weight of this responsibility settles on his broad shoulders as he realizes the fate of humanity now rests with him. The Galactic Council, comprised of the most powerful alien races, turns its collective gaze upon Greg. Their demand is clear and immediate. Humans must prove their superior fitness to validate Quinn's claims. The ultimatum hangs in the air like a guillotine blade. If humans cannot demonstrate their exceptional abilities within one solar cycle, Earth will be denied entry into the Galactic Federation. The implications are dire, potentially resulting in isolation or worse for humanity. Greg's mind races as he processes the sudden turn of events. He scans the room, taking in a diverse array of alien life forms, each regarding him with a mixture of skepticism, curiosity, and in some cases, barely concealed hostility. He knows he must navigate this complex political landscape while preparing for a series of grueling physical and mental challenges designed to test the limits of human capability. As Greg begins to strategize, his eyes lock with Ambassador Quinn's across the hall. Her alien gaze is filled with a mixture of scientific curiosity and something more primal. The tension between them is palpable, hinting at a potential alliance, or perhaps a complication, in the trials to come. Unbeknownst to Greg, rival alien factions are already plotting to sabotage the human trials. They fear the implications of a physically superior species joining the Galactic Federation and potentially upsetting the delicate balance of power. These shadowy forces begin to mobilize, determined to undermine Greg's efforts by any means necessary. The assembly hall continues to buzz with activity as Greg steps forward. He clears his throat, preparing to address the Galactic Council and accept their challenge. The fate of Earth hangs in the balance as he opens his mouth to speak, knowing that his words and actions in the coming days will determine the future of human-alien relations and potentially reshape the galaxy itself. The stage is set for a high-stakes contest that will push Greg to his limits. He must not only prove humanity's worth, but also uncover and thwart any attempts to sabotage his efforts. As the eyes of the galaxy focus on this lone human male, the question remains, can Greg Davis live up to Ambassador Quinn's bold claim and secure humanity's place among the stars? Greg Davis took a deep breath, his heart pounding as he faced the expectant gazes of the Galactic Council. The weight of Earth's future pressed upon him as he spoke, his voice steady despite the tension coursing through his body. "I accept your challenge," he declared, his words echoing through the assembly hall. "Humanity is ready to prove its worth to the galaxy." A murmur rippled through the alien delegates, a mix of approval and skepticism. Before Greg could elaborate, a tall, imposing figure stepped forward from the shadows. It was Dr. Xanthor, the Rigelian chief of the Federation's Fitness Assessment Division. "Mr. Davis, if you'll follow me," Dr. Xanthor said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate the air around them. "We have much to discuss regarding your upcoming trials." Greg nodded, casting one last glance at the assembled aliens before following the hulking reptilian out of the chamber. As they walked through the winding corridors of the Galactic Council's headquarters, Greg couldn't help but marvel at the diversity of life forms they passed. Beings of all shapes, sizes, and colors moved about their business, some eyeing him with curiosity, others with barely concealed disdain. They arrived at a secure wing, the doors sliding open with a soft hiss to reveal a state-of-the-art facility. Holographic displays flickered to life as they entered, showing various alien landscapes and environmental conditions. Dr. Xanthor's iridescent scales shimmered under the artificial light as he turned to face Greg. "Mr. Davis, the trials ahead will test every aspect of your physical and mental capabilities. You will face challenges in strength, endurance, agility, and problem-solving across a range of planetary environments." The Rigelian gestured to the holographic displays, each showcasing a different hellish landscape. From the crushing gravity of Centauri Prime to the toxic atmosphere of Zeta Reticuli, you must prove that humans can not only survive, but excel in conditions that would break lesser species. Greg's mind raced as he absorbed the information, the enormity of the task before him becoming clear. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, the door slid open once more. Ambassador Quinn strode in, her antennae twitching with nervous energy. "Dr. Xanthor, I hope you don't mind my intrusion. I believe my expertise on human physiology could be valuable in preparing Mr. Davis for the trials." Greg felt a mix of emotions at Quinn's arrival, gratitude for her offer of help, but also a twinge of resentment for the position she had put him in. However, as their eyes met, he couldn't deny the spark of connection between them. Dr. Xanthor considered for a moment before nodding his assent. "Very well, Ambassador. Your input may indeed prove useful. Mr. Davis, I suggest you begin your training immediately. The fate of your species hangs in the balance." With that ominous statement, the Rigelian left, leaving Greg alone with Quinn. An awkward silence fell between them, broken only by the soft hum of the facility's equipment. Quinn stepped closer, her blue skin seeming to glow under the harsh lights. "Greg, I want you to know that I truly believe in humanity's potential. My research wasn't meant to cause this chaos, but to highlight the unique adaptability of your species." Greg sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I understand, Quinn, and I appreciate your offer to help. We're going to need every advantage we can get." Over the next few days, Greg's world became a blur of intense physical conditioning and mental challenges. The training facility's biodome proved to be both a blessing and a curse, allowing them to simulate a vast array of alien environments, but also pushing Greg to his absolute limits. Quinn was there every step of the way, her scientific knowledge proving invaluable as they worked to enhance Greg's natural abilities. Despite the high-pressure situation, Greg found himself drawn to her intelligence and alien beauty. Their close proximity during training sessions only intensified the growing attraction between them. On the fourth day of training, they tackled the simulated high-gravity conditions of the Centauri homeworld. Greg's muscles screamed in protest as he fought against the crushing force, each step feeling like he was wading through quicksand. "Come on, Greg," Quinn called out, her voice strained as she too struggled against the increased gravity. "You're almost there." With a final burst of effort, Greg reached the designated checkpoint. As he did, his legs gave out, and he collapsed to the ground. Quinn rushed to his side, her concern evident as she helped him to his feet. For a moment, they stood there, bodies pressed together, both breathing heavily from the exertion. Greg became acutely aware of Quinn's alien form against his, the strange yet alluring texture of her skin, the subtle scent that was uniquely hers. Their eyes locked, and Greg saw his own desire reflected in Quinn's gaze. The moment passed as quickly as it had come. They separated, both acutely aware of the line they had almost crossed and the potential complications it could bring. As Greg caught his breath, Quinn busied herself with the environmental controls, her antennae twitching nervously. "Perhaps we should move on to some mental exercises," she suggested, her voice slightly higher than usual. "I could teach you some Andorian meditation techniques to enhance your focus." Greg nodded, grateful for the change of pace. That sounds good. We need to be prepared for every aspect of these trials. As they settled into the meditation session, neither of them noticed the small, gelatinous form that oozed away from the air vent near the biodome's control panel. Kraz, the Zorgan ambassador, had seen everything, and now had the perfect ammunition to ensure the humans' failure. The day of the trials loomed ever closer, and Greg felt the pressure mounting. He stood at the entrance of the trial arena, his heart racing as he contemplated the challenges that lay ahead. The fate of humanity rested on his shoulders, and he couldn't afford to fail. As he steeled himself for what was to come, he felt a gentle touch on his shoulder. Turning, he saw Quinn standing beside him, her eyes filled with a mixture of concern and something deeper, more personal. "Greg," she said softly, "there's something you need to know about the trials. Dr. Xanthor informed me earlier. There's an additional challenge." Greg's brow furrowed. "What kind of challenge?" Quinn's antennae drooped slightly as she replied, "They want you to demonstrate human reproductive fitness as well." The implications of this new requirement hit Greg like a ton of bricks. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, the doors to the arena began to open. The time for talk was over. The trials were about to begin. The implications of this new requirement sent a shiver down Greg's spine, but there was no time to dwell on it. The massive doors swung open, revealing the first trial arena. Greg stepped into a lush, simulated jungle environment. Towering trees with thick vines stretched as far as the eye could see, while the humid air clung to his skin. The obstacle course before him was a daunting sight. Deep mud pits, narrow ledges over seemingly bottomless chasms, and a complex network of swinging vines. Taking a deep breath, Greg launched himself into the course. His muscles burned as he swung from vine to vine, using the momentum to propel himself forward. He leaped over mud pits, his feet barely touching the ground before he was airborne again. As he approached a particularly wide chasm, Greg felt a sudden shift in his body weight. The world seemed to press down on him, his limbs becoming leaden. He stumbled, nearly toppling into the abyss below. "What the hell?" Greg gasped, fighting against the increased gravity. His mind raced, recalling the training sessions with Quinn. This was like the Centauri simulation, but worse. With a grunt of effort, Greg grabbed onto a nearby vine, using his upper body's strength to haul himself to safety. His arms trembled with the exertion, but he pushed on, refusing to let this unexpected challenge defeat him. Unbeknownst to Greg, Dr. Xanthor's eyes narrowed as he watched the gravity readings fluctuate on his monitoring screen. The Rigelian scales rippled with suspicion as he barked orders to his subordinates. "Investigate the environmental controls immediately. Something's not right here." Despite the increased gravity, Greg pressed on. He scrambled up sheer rock faces, leaped across treacherous gaps, and navigated through dense underbrush. His lungs burned, and sweat poured down his face, but he refused to slow down. As Greg neared the finish line, the gravity suddenly normalized. He crossed the threshold, gasping for air but victorious. The alien spectators buzzed with excitement, clearly impressed by his performance. Emerging from the arena, Greg found Quinn waiting for him. Her antennae twitched with concern as she approached, a medical kit in her hands. "Greg, are you all right?" she asked, her cool fingers gently probing a scrape on his arm. That was unexpected. Greg winced slightly at her touch, but didn't pull away. "I'm fine, but something weird happened in there. The gravity." "I know," Quinn interrupted, her voice low. "Dr. Xanthor is investigating. For now, we need to focus on your next trial." Before Greg could respond, he was ushered into a sterile, white room. Holographic projectors hummed to life around him, creating the illusion of an alien spacecraft's bridge. Strange symbols flashed across screens, and unfamiliar controls blinked ominously. A disembodied voice announced, "Vessel critical failure imminent. Reactor meltdown in 10 minutes." Greg's heart raced, but he forced himself to remain calm. He closed his eyes briefly, recalling Quinn's meditation techniques. As his breathing steadied, he opened his eyes and set to work. His fingers flew over the alien controls, his mind working overtime to decipher the unfamiliar language and symbols. Greg's brow furrowed in concentration as he rerouted power, stabilized systems, and navigated through layers of alien security protocols. From her observation post, Quinn watched in awe as Greg tackled the challenge. Her scientific interest mingled with a growing personal admiration for the human's adaptability and quick thinking. With seconds to spare, Greg input the final command sequence. The holographic ship's alarms fell silent, and the crisis was averted. He sagged against the control panel, exhausted but triumphant. The trials continued relentlessly. Greg swam through a simulated methane ocean, his muscles straining against the thick liquid. He ran a marathon in a low-oxygen environment, each breath a struggle as he pushed his body to its limits. During a brief respite, Greg overheard two alien competitors whispering nearby. "Did you hear about the human reproductive fitness test?" One hissed, "Yes, quite unusual. I wonder how he'll perform," the other replied. Greg's cheeks flushed, his mind once again drawn to Quinn and the complex feelings developing between them. The final trial of the day tested Greg's strength in high-gravity environments. As he strained to lift objects that seemed to weigh tons, he caught sight of Quinn observing him. Their eyes met, and Greg felt a surge of energy course through him. With a roar of effort, he hoisted the impossibly heavy object over his head, earning gasps of astonishment from the alien audience. As Greg exited the arena, his body aching but his spirit unbroken, he was confronted by Kraz, the Zorgan ambassador. The gelatinous alien's form rippled as he spoke. "Congratulations on your performance, human," Kraz said, his tone dripping with false sincerity. "You've certainly surprised us all." Greg nodded politely, trying to ignore the suspicion gnawing at him. "Thank you, Ambassador. If you'll excuse me, I need to rest." Retiring to his quarters, Greg's mind raced with the day's events. As he peeled off his sweat-soaked clothing, his communication device chirped. A message from Quinn appeared. "Greg, we need to discuss your performance and prepare for tomorrow's trials. Meet me in my office in 30 minutes. Greg's heart skipped a beat as he read the message. Despite his exhaustion, he felt a flutter of anticipation at the thought of seeing Quinn again. As he stepped into the shower to rinse away the day's grime, he couldn't help but wonder what challenges and opportunities tomorrow would bring. As he toweled off and dressed in fresh clothes, Greg's mind raced with anticipation and nerves. 30 minutes later, Greg found himself standing outside Quinn's private quarters. He hesitated for a moment, his hand hovering over the door panel. Taking a deep breath, he pressed the button, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. The room was bathed in a soft blue ambient glow that reminded Greg of the holographic projections of Andoria he'd seen during his training. Quinn stood near a large viewport, her blue skin almost luminescent in the dim light. She turned as he entered, her antennae twitching slightly. "Greg," she said, her voice warm but tinged with what sounded like nervousness. "Please come in." As Greg stepped inside, the door closed behind him. Quinn gestured to a plush, alien-designed couch that seemed to shift and mold itself as he approached. "Have a seat. I hope you find it comfortable." Greg sat down, marveling at how the couch seemed to adapt to his body, providing perfect support. Quinn took a seat beside him, close enough that he could feel the subtle heat radiating from her alien form. "Your performance in the trials today was truly impressive," Quinn began, her eyes meeting his. "Your adaptability and quick thinking. It's remarkable. Greg felt a flush of pride at her words. I couldn't have done it without your training, he replied earnestly. You've been invaluable, Quinn. As they discussed the day's events, Greg noticed Quinn's professional demeanor gradually softening. Her antennae moved in gentle, fluid motions that he was beginning to recognize as a sign of relaxation or comfort. Their conversation drifted from the technical aspects of the trials to more personal topics, the air between them growing thick with unspoken tension. Finally, Quinn broached the subject they'd both been avoiding. About tomorrow's trial, she said, her voice lowering slightly. The reproductive fitness assessment. Greg felt his heart rate spike. Yes, he prompted, when Quinn seemed to hesitate. Quinn's cheeks darkened in what Greg assumed was the Andorian equivalent of a blush. As the leading expert on human physiology, I've been tasked with conducting this particular trial. The implications of her words hung heavy in the air between them. Greg opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Quinn reached for a glass of water on the low table before them. In her flustered state, her usually graceful movements were clumsy, and the glass tipped over. Without thinking, Greg's hand shot out, catching the glass before it could spill its contents. Water sloshed over his fingers as he set it upright, but the majority remained contained. He looked up to find Quinn staring at him, her eyes wide with admiration. Your reflexes are extraordinary, she breathed, her hand still outstretched. Their fingers brushed as Greg released a glass, and a jolt of electricity seemed to pass between them. For a moment, they remained frozen, the air crackling with tension. Then, as if drawn by an irresistible force, they leaned towards each other. Their lips met in a passionate kiss, years of scientific curiosity and growing attraction finally finding release. Greg marveled at the alien texture of Quinn's skin, the subtle taste that was uniquely her. His hands moved to her waist, pulling her closer. Just as the kiss deepened, a sharp beeping sound cut through the room. Quinn pulled away reluctantly, her antennae quivering. She tapped the communication device on her wrist, and Dr. Xanthor's face appeared in a holographic projection. Ambassador Quinn, Mr. Davis. The Regellian's voice was tense. We have a situation. There's evidence of sabotage in the environmental control systems. Security footage shows the Zorgan ambassador, Kraz, leaving the restricted area during Mr. Davis's obstacle course run. I need you both in my office immediately. The projection winked out, leaving Greg and Quinn staring at each other, their moment of intimacy shattered by the urgency of the situation. Quinn stood, smoothing her clothing. We should go, she said, her voice slightly husky. But we'll continue this discussion later. Greg nodded, standing as well. As they hurried from Quinn's quarters towards Dr. Xanthor's office, his mind raced. The sabotage attempt, the kiss with Quinn, the looming reproductive fitness trial. It was almost too much to process. But as they rounded a corner and saw Dr. Xanthor's agitated form through the transparent walls of his office, Greg knew he had to focus. The fate of humanity might well depend on what happened next. They entered the office to find the Regellian pacing, his scales rippling with agitation. Holographic displays flickered around him, showing security footage and data readouts. As soon as the door closed behind them, Dr. Xanthor launched into an explanation of the evidence against Kraz. The gravity fluctuations during your trial were no accident, Mr. Davis, he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. We have footage of Kraz accessing the environmental controls just before your run began. Greg's fists clenched at his sides. So he was trying to sabotage my performance, he said, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. Quinn placed a comforting hand on his arm. We need to address this carefully, she said, her scientific mind already working on the problem. If we accuse Kraz publicly without concrete proof, it could cause a diplomatic incident. Dr. Xanthor nodded in agreement. I suggest we confront him privately first. Give him a chance to explain his actions before we involve the full Galactic Council. Greg's eyes narrowed as an idea formed. This could be an opportunity, he said slowly. If we approach Cross carefully, we might be able to gather more information. Find out if he's working alone or if there are other conspirators involved. As they began to formulate a plan, a shrill alarm suddenly blared through the facility. Red warning lights flashed, casting an eerie glow over their faces. Dr. Xanthor rushed to a control panel, his fingers flying over the alien interface. The biodome, he hissed, his scales paling. The environmental systems are malfunctioning. The atmosphere is rapidly becoming toxic. Greg's mind raced, recalling the layout of the facility and the location of the biodome where the next set of trials was to take place. Without hesitation, he stepped forward. "I'll go," he said firmly. "My physiology might be better suited to withstand the conditions than your staff. I can manually override the systems." Quinn's antennae twitched in alarm. "Greg, no. It's too dangerous." But Greg was already moving towards the door. "This is what I've been training for," he said, meeting Quinn's eyes. "To prove humanity's worth to the Galactic Federation. I have to do this." Dr. Xanthor hesitated for a moment before nodding grimly. "Very well, Mr. Davis, but you must hurry. The atmosphere is deteriorating rapidly." As Greg rushed from the office, Quinn's voice called after him. "Be careful." He sprinted through the facility's corridors, his heart pounding in his chest. As he approached the biodome's entrance, he could see the swirling, toxic atmosphere through the transparent walls. It was a hellish sight, with visible currents of noxious gases and wildly fluctuating temperature readings on the external displays. A technician hurriedly helped Greg into a protective suit, explaining its features as they worked. "The life support systems will give you about 15 minutes in those conditions," the alien said, its multiple eyes blinking rapidly in concern. Greg nodded, sealing the helmet. As the airlock cycled open, he took a deep breath of filtered air and stepped into the chaos of the failing biodome. The door hissed shut behind him, and he was alone in a world gone mad. The atmosphere inside was even worse than it had appeared from outside. Visibility was poor, with swirling eddies of gases creating a disorienting fog. The temperature seemed to swing wildly from one extreme to another, the suit system struggling to compensate. Greg pushed forward, fighting against the shifting air currents. His training kicked in, and he found himself automatically adjusting his movements to compensate for the changing conditions. As he navigated through the treacherous environment, he couldn't help but feel a grim sense of satisfaction. Every step forward was proof of humanity's adaptability, their worthiness to join the galactic community. The central control panel loomed ahead, barely visible through the toxic haze. Greg's oxygen levels were already dropping faster than he'd anticipated, the harsh atmosphere taking its toll on the suit systems. As he reached the panel, his gloved hands moving over the alien controls, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The panel had been deliberately sabotaged. Wires were cut, components removed or rearranged. This was no mere malfunction. It was a calculated attack. The realization hit Greg like a physical blow. Krah's actions in the obstacle course were just the tip of the iceberg. This was part of a larger plot to discredit humanity and prevent Earth's admission to the Galactic Federation. With his oxygen running dangerously low and the biodome's conditions worsening by the second, Greg knew he was in a race against time. He had to repair the damage and restore the environmental systems before it was too late. Not just for himself, but for the future of humanity among the stars. Outside the biodome, Quinn watched Greg's life signs on a monitor, her antennae twitching with scarcely controlled anxiety. As his oxygen levels dipped into the red, she realized with startling clarity that her feelings for this human had grown far beyond scientific curiosity or physical attraction. She was falling in love with him. Inside the toxic maelstrom, Greg's fingers flew over the alien technology, his mind working overtime to repair the sabotage and restore the systems. As he worked, he knew that more than just his life was at stake. This was a pivotal moment, one that would determine humanity's place in the galaxy and uncover a conspiracy that threatened the very foundations of the Galactic Federation. With a final, desperate effort, Greg input the last command sequence. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the swirling gases began to dissipate. The temperature stabilized, and the readouts on the control panel shifted from angry red to a calm green. Greg sagged against the panel, his vision blurring as his oxygen reserves hit critical levels. As he fought to remain conscious, he knew that this was just the beginning. The true challenge lay ahead, confronting Kraz and his co-conspirators and securing humanity's place among the stars. Through the clearing atmosphere, Greg saw the biodome's door slide open. Quinn rushed in, leading a team of medical personnel. As she reached him, her eyes shining with a mixture of relief and something deeper, Greg knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he wouldn't face them alone. The stage was set for a dramatic confrontation that would shape the future of Earth and the Galactic Federation. But for now, as Quinn helped him to his feet, Greg allowed himself a moment of triumph. He had passed this unexpected trial, and in doing so, had taken a major step towards proving humanity's worth to the galaxy. Galactic community. As the airlock hissed open, Greg stepped out of the biodome on shaky legs, his suit still steaming from the toxic atmosphere inside. He blinked in the harsh light, his eyes adjusting to the scene before him. A crowd had gathered outside the facility, a sea of alien faces turned towards him with expressions ranging from awe to curiosity. Dr. Xanthor stood at the forefront, his scales shimmering with what Greg now recognized as excitement. "Mr. Davis," the Rigelian's voice boomed across the assembly, "your actions today have demonstrated the very qualities we seek in potential members of the Galactic Federation. Your quick thinking and adaptability in the face of danger are commendable." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Greg felt a surge of pride, not just for himself, but for all of humanity. He had proven that humans could rise to the challenges of the galaxy. Before he could respond, a blur of blue movement caught his eye. Quinn rushed forward, her antennae quivering with emotion. Without hesitation, she threw her arms around him, pulling him into a tight embrace. "You reckless, brilliant human," she whispered, her voice thick with relief. Greg returned the embrace, acutely aware of the surprised reactions from the aliens around them. He could hear the faint clicks and whirs of recording devices, capturing this moment of interspecies connection. As they separated, Greg noticed the varied reactions among the gathered dignitaries. Some appeared intrigued, others uncomfortable, and a few seemed openly disapproving. He realized that this simple act of physical affection had likely sparked a galaxy-wide conversation about human customs and relationships. Dr. Xanthor cleared his throat, drawing attention back to the matter at hand. "Mr. Davis, Ambassador Quinn, if you would join me in my office, we have urgent matters to discuss." As they followed the Rigelian, Greg caught snippets of conversation from the dispersing crowd. Phrases like human adaptability and unexpected diplomatic implications floated through the air, hinting at the ripple effects of his actions. In the privacy of Dr. Xanthor's office, the atmosphere quickly turned serious. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing security footage and data readouts related to the sabotage attempt. The evidence against Ambassador Kraz is compelling. Dr. Xanthor began, his voice low. "We received authorization from the Galactic Council to conduct a discreet investigation into his activities and communications." Quinn leaned forward, her scientific mind already at work. "We need to determine if Kraz is working alone or if this is part of a larger conspiracy." Greg nodded, his mind racing with the implications. How do we proceed without tipping our hand? As they delved into the details of the investigation, a series of chimes interrupted their discussion. Dr. Xanthor's communication panel lit up with incoming messages from various alien ambassadors. "It seems your heroic actions have captured the attention of several species, Mr. Davis," Dr. Xanthor said, a note of surprise in his voice. "They're expressing interest in learning more about human physiology and culture." Greg felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was an unexpected opportunity to build alliances, but it also meant increased scrutiny. "I'd be happy to meet with them," he said, straightening his shoulders. Quinn placed a hand on his arm, her touch sending a jolt through him. "Before that, we need to prepare you for the next phase of trials. The Galactic Council has approved a series of environmental adaptation tests." Dr. Xanthor nodded, pulling up new holographic displays. "You'll be facing simulated versions of 5 different alien homeworlds, each with unique challenges. This will test not only your physical capabilities, but also your problem-solving skills and adaptability." As Greg studied the harsh landscapes and alien atmospheres displayed before him, Quinn stepped closer. "I'll be overseeing your preparation personally," she said, her voice carrying a mix of professional interest and personal concern. Dr. Xanthor's scales rippled in what Greg had come to recognize as the Rigelian equivalent of raising an eyebrow. "The Council has agreed, given Ambassador Quinn's expertise in human physiology. However, to ensure complete fairness, additional overseers will be assigned to monitor the process." Greg nodded, understanding the need for transparency. As they began discussing the details of his training regimen, he couldn't help but feel a growing sense of anticipation. The challenges ahead were daunting, but they also represented a chance to showcase humanity's potential on a galactic stage. Over the next few days, Greg immersed himself in intensive preparation. Quinn introduced him to an array of advanced alien technologies designed to enhance his adaptability. He marveled at the neural interface that allowed him to rapidly assimilate crucial survival information, feeling as if entire libraries of knowledge were being downloaded directly into his brain. The nanotech suit was even more impressive. As Greg slipped it on for the first time, he felt it mold to his body like a second skin. Quinn guided him through its functions, demonstrating how it could partially mimic the physiological adaptations of various alien species. "This suit will help you withstand extreme temperatures, pressures, and even mimic certain biological functions of other species," Quinn explained, her fingers deftly adjusting the controls. "But remember, it's only an aid. Your human ingenuity and adaptability are still your greatest assets." As they worked closely together, Greg found himself increasingly aware of Quinn's presence. The air between them seemed charged with unspoken emotions, their professional relationship deepening into something more complex. During a brief break in their training, Greg received an encrypted message on his personal communication device. His heart raced as he read the contents, warning of a deeper conspiracy within the Galactic Federation. The anonymous source hinted at a faction of powerful alien species working to prevent Earth's admission, fearing disruption to the existing balance of power. Looking up, he caught Quinn's concerned gaze. In that moment, he made a decision. "Quinn, there's something I need to show you," he said, his voice low. As he shared the contents of the message, he saw a mix of emotions play across Quinn's face: surprise, concern, and a fierce willpower that mirrored his own. "We need to investigate this," Quinn whispered, her antennae twitching with agitation. "But we can't let it interfere with your trials. The future of Earth and the galactic community depends on your performance." Greg nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "We'll have to be discreet, conduct our own investigation, while keeping up appearances." As they returned to their training, Greg felt a new layer of complexity added to their relationship. They were no longer just trainer and trainee, or even potential romantic partners. They were now co-conspirators, working together to uncover a truth that could reshape the galaxy. The day of the first environmental trial arrived all too quickly. Greg stood before the airlock of the simulation chamber, the nanotech suit hugging his body like a second skin. Through the transparent door, he could see the harsh landscape of a high-gravity, high-pressure world with a corrosive atmosphere. Quinn's voice came through his communication link, steady and reassuring. "Remember your training, Greg. Trust your instincts and the suit's capabilities. We'll be monitoring you closely." As the airlock began to cycle, Greg took a deep breath. This was more than just a test of his physical abilities. It was a chance to prove humanity's worth, to uncover the truth behind the conspiracy, and to secure Earth's future in the stars. The door slid open, revealing the alien world in all its hostile beauty. Greg stepped forward, his enhanced senses already adapting to the crushing gravity and swirling, corrosive winds. As he took his first steps into the unknown, he felt a surge of dedication. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them, for Earth, for humanity, and for the truth that lay hidden in the vast expanse of the galaxy. Galactic community. As Greg took his first steps into the alien landscape, the crushing gravity immediately assaulted his body. The nanotech suit strained against the intense pressure, its systems whirring as they fought to compensate. The corrosive winds howled around him, carrying particles that glinted menacingly in the harsh light of the alien sun. Greg's enhanced senses, courtesy of the suit, picked up on the acrid smell of the atmosphere, a cocktail of chemicals that would be lethal to unprotected human lungs. He had barely covered 100 meters when he felt a sharp sting on his left arm. A quick glance revealed a small tear in the suit's fabric, the edges sizzling as the corrosive atmosphere began to eat away at the material. "Quinn," Greg called into his communicator, his voice tight with urgency. "We have a problem. The suit's integrity is compromised." Static crackled in his ear before Quinn's voice came through, imbued with concern. "Greg, we're seeing fluctuations in the suit's power levels. Can you make it back to the airlock?" Greg surveyed the terrain behind him. The entrance to the simulation chamber was now obscured by swirling, toxic clouds. "Negative," he replied, gritting his teeth as he felt the sting of the atmosphere seeping through the growing tear. "I need to find shelter and fast." As if in response to his dire situation, Greg's eyes locked onto a dark opening in the craggy landscape ahead. An underground cave system. It was his best chance for survival. With revitalized commitment, Greg pushed forward, each step a battle against the planet's punishing gravity. The tear in his suit grew larger, and he could feel the burning sensation spreading across his skin. Finally, he reached the cave entrance. Greg stumbled inside, the sudden absence of wind and relative darkness a stark contrast to the harsh environment outside. As his eyes adjusted, he saw the cave system stretching deep into the planet's crust. "I found shelter," Greg reported, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "But the suit's compromised. I don't know how long it'll hold." In the control room, Quinn's fingers flew over the holographic displays, her antennae twitching with agitation. "We're getting corrupted data from the suit's sensors," she said, her voice tense. "Greg, can you give me a visual assessment of your condition?" Greg activated the suit's external camera, providing Quinn with a view of the damage. "It's not good," he admitted, examining the growing holes in the suit's fabric. "But I'm still standing. I'm going to explore deeper into the caves. There might be a pocket of breathable air or at least some protection from the corrosive atmosphere." As Greg ventured further into the cave system, the light from his suit's built-in illuminators revealed strange, crystalline formations on the walls. Despite the gravity of his situation, he couldn't help but marvel at their alien beauty. Suddenly, his foot struck something metallic. Greg crouched down, brushing away centuries of mineral deposits to reveal a small, spherical object. Intricate engravings covered its surface, and as he lifted it, he felt a faint vibration, an energy signature unlike anything he'd encountered before. "Quinn," he whispered, his heart racing with excitement and trepidation. "I've found something, some kind of artifact. It's not natural to this environment." Before Quinn could respond, a tremor shook the cave. Rocks and crystals crashed down around Greg as he clutched the artifact to his chest and ran deeper into the tunnel system. In the control room, alarms blared as the seismic activity registered on the monitors. Quinn watched in horror as Greg's vital signs spiked erratically, the malfunctioning suit unable to provide accurate data. "Greg," she called out, her voice rising in panic. "Greg, can you hear me?" Dr. Xanthor moved closer to Quinn, his scales shimmering with concern, and something else, suspicion. "Ambassador," he said, his voice low and measured, "perhaps it would be best if you stepped back and allowed the medical team to take over monitoring." Quinn whirled to face him, her antennae quivering with a mix of emotions. "With all due respect, Dr. Xanthor, I am the foremost expert on human physiology in this facility. Greg's life depends on my knowledge." As they argued, neither noticed the subtle movement of Dr. Xanthor's assistant, who discreetly began accessing Quinn's personnel files on a separate terminal. Back in the cave system, Greg had found a relatively stable chamber. The artifact in his hands pulsed with a soft, blue light, seeming to respond to his touch. Despite the dire circumstances, he felt a surge of triumph. He had not only survived, but potentially discovered something of immense value to the galactic community. As the tremor subsided, Greg activated his communicator once more. "Quinn, I'm okay," he reported, his voice hoarse but steady. "The suit's barely holding together, but I think I can make it back to the entrance." Relief flooded Quinn's face as Greg's voice came through. "Thank the stars," she breathed. "Greg, listen carefully. We're going to guide you out. Just follow my voice." With Quinn's guidance and his own commitment, Greg navigated the treacherous path back to the cave entrance. As he emerged into the harsh alien landscape once more, he saw a team of medical staff waiting at the airlock, led by a tall, willowy alien with iridescent skin. Greg stumbled the last few meters to the airlock, clutching the artifact tightly. As the door sealed behind him and the decontamination process began, he allowed himself a moment of pure relief. He had survived the impossible, completed the trial, and discovered something that could change everything. As the inner airlock door opened, Greg locked eyes with Quinn. In that moment, a wordless understanding passed between them. The artifact he held, the information they had uncovered, it was all part of something much bigger than either of them had imagined. The iridescent alien stepped forward, introducing herself as Dr. Zara. "Mr. Davis," she said, her voice melodic and soothing, "I need to examine you immediately. The data we received during your trial was most unusual." As Dr. Zara led Greg away for his medical examination, Quinn turned to face Dr. Xanthor. The Regellian's expression was unreadable, but Quinn sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The trials were just the beginning, and the game they were playing had just become infinitely more complex. The urgency of their situation was palpable, heightened by the weight of the alien artifact Greg had discovered. As they left the medical bay, Quinn pulled Greg aside into an empty corridor. "We need to talk," she whispered, her antennae twitching nervously. "But not here. Meet me in the hydroponics lab in an hour." Greg nodded, understanding the need for discretion. He spent the next hour undergoing a thorough decontamination process, his mind racing with questions about the artifact and the implications of the encrypted message. When he arrived at the hydroponics lab, Quinn was already there, surrounded by lush alien flora. She quickly ushered him into a secluded corner, shielded from view by towering fronds of bioluminescent plants. "I've been analyzing the data from your suit," Quinn began, her voice low. "There are anomalies that can't be explained by equipment failure alone. Someone tampered with the environmental controls during your trial." Greg's eyes widened. You think it's connected to the conspiracy? Before Quinn could respond, their communicators buzzed simultaneously. Dr. Xanthor's gravelly voice came through, tinged with an uncharacteristic urgency. Ambassador Quinn, Mr. Davis, report to my office immediately. Exchanging worried glances, they hurried to the Regellian's office. As the door slid open, they found Dr. Xanthor pacing, his scales rippling with agitation. We have a situation, he announced without preamble. Our security team has uncovered evidence of a vast conspiracy within the Galactic Federation. It extends far beyond Ambassador Cross and his known associates. Greg felt a chill run down his spine. How deep does this go? Dr. Xanthor's compound eyes focused on Greg. Deep enough that we need to change our plans. Mr. Davis, your preparation for the diplomatic trial must be postponed. You're needed at an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council's Inner Circle. Quinn stepped forward, her antennae quivering with concern. Is that wise? Greg's barely recovered from the environmental trial. It's necessary, Dr. Xanthor insisted. As the key subject of the trials, his input is crucial in addressing this threat. Hours later, Greg found himself standing before the Inner Circle, a group of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The chamber was a marvel of alien architecture, with sweeping arches that seemed to defy gravity and walls that shimmered with holographic displays. Taking a deep breath, Greg presented the information he and Quinn had gathered. He spoke of the encrypted messages, the sabotage attempts, and finally, produced the alien artifact he had discovered in the cave. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Greg could see the shock and concern on the faces of the various alien species represented. Some called for an immediate suspension of the trials, while others argued for maintaining the appearance of normalcy. Amidst the heated debate, a new voice cut through the clamor. We cannot allow fear to dictate our actions. All heads turned to the speaker, a stern-looking, silver-skinned humanoid with 4 arms. Greg recognized him from the briefing files as Admiral Xyrax of the Arcturian species. I propose a different approach, Xyrax continued, his voice commanding attention. We use Mr. Davis as bait to draw out our hidden enemies. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of protests and questions. Greg felt a mix of apprehension and persistence as Admiral Xyrax outlined his plan. It involved a series of new, more challenging trials that would push the limits of human capability and force the conspirators to take more desperate actions. As the details of the plan were discussed, Greg caught Quinn's eye across the chamber. Her expression was a mix of concern and purpose. He gave her a slight nod, silently communicating his willingness to participate in this dangerous gambit. The next day, Greg found himself in a massive arena, surrounded by representatives from countless alien species. The air was thick with anticipation as he prepared for the first event of the multi-species Olympic-style competition. As he took his place at the starting line, Greg's enhanced senses picked up on the subtle vibrations of hidden sensors and surveillance devices scattered throughout the arena. He knew that every move he made, every reaction from the crowd, was being closely monitored for signs of the conspirators. The starting signal blared, a piercing tone that set Greg's nerves on edge. He exploded into motion, his nanotech suit working in perfect harmony with his muscles as he sprinted down the track. Beside him, aliens of various shapes and sizes pushed their bodies to the limit. Greg's lungs burned as he pushed himself harder than ever before. He could feel the eyes of thousands of spectators upon him, judging humanity's worth based on his performance. As he crossed the finish line, narrowly beating out a 6-limbed Centaurian, the crowd erupted in a cacophony of cheers and alien vocalizations. Throughout the day, Greg competed in event after event, showcasing humanity's adaptability and resilience. He lifted weights in crushing gravity, navigated obstacle courses designed for species with vastly different physiologies. and even participated in a telekinetic challenge using experimental human technology. Between events, Quinn approached him under the guise of performing medical checks. Her touch lingered as she attached monitoring devices, and Greg could see the worry in her eyes. "They're watching," she whispered, her antennae twitching subtly towards a group of Federation officials. "Admiral Zyrax's team has intercepted some transmissions. We're getting close." As night fell and the events concluded, Greg felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. He had pushed himself to the limit and emerged victorious in several events, earning grudging respect from even the most skeptical alien spectators. Later, in a secure location, Greg and Quinn met to discuss the day's events. Quinn's eyes shone with excitement as she shared her latest discovery about the alien artifact. "It contains coordinates, Greg," she said, her voice hushed with awe, "to a star system that doesn't exist in any Federation charts. This could change everything." As the implications of her words sank in, Greg felt the weight of their situation pressing down on him. The fate of humanity in the galactic community, the conspiracy threatening to unravel everything, and now this potentially game-changing discovery, it was almost too much to bear. In that moment of shared vulnerability, Greg and Quinn's eyes met. The tension that had been building between them finally broke. Greg leaned in, his hand gently cupping Quinn's face as their lips met in a passionate kiss. For a brief, blissful moment, the challenges ahead faded away, leaving only the warmth of their embrace. Their moment of intimacy was shattered by the harsh buzz of their communicators. Admiral Zyrax's urgent voice came through, his usually calm tone tinged with alarm. "Mr. Davis, Ambassador Quinn, we have a situation. Our intelligence suggests the conspirators are accelerating their plans. There's evidence of an imminent attempt on Mr. Davis's life." Greg and Quinn exchanged grim looks, the gravity of their situation settling over them once more. As they prepared to face this new threat, Greg couldn't shake the feeling that the next phase of the trials would be the most dangerous yet. With enemies closing in and time running out, he knew that the challenges ahead would test not only his abilities, but also the strength of his newfound connection with Quinn. As they left the secure room, stepping into the unknown, Greg's drive hardened. Whatever came next, he was ready to face it. For Earth, for humanity, and for the truth that lay hidden in the vast expanse of the galaxy. Galaxy! Greg steeled himself for what lay ahead. The urgent tone of Admiral Zyrax's voice spurred Greg and Quinn into action. They quickly gathered their belongings and followed the encrypted coordinates sent to their communicators. Moving swiftly through dimly lit corridors, they arrived at a hidden transport pod. As the pod descended deep beneath the Galactic Council headquarters, Greg felt the weight of their situation pressing down on him. The smooth hum of the transport was a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding above. The doors slid open, revealing a vast underground complex. Admiral Zyrax stood waiting, his forearms crossed in a gesture of concern. "Mr. Davis, Ambassador Quinn, welcome to our most secure facility," he said, ushering them inside. The bunker was a marvel of alien engineering. Holographic displays flickered across curved walls, showing real-time data from across the galaxy. Beings of various species worked at consoles, their movements precise and urgent. Admiral Zyrax led them to a private briefing room. As the door sealed behind them, he activated a privacy field. "We've uncovered a coalition of rogue agents from multiple species," he explained, his voice grave. "Their goal is to eliminate you, Mr. Davis, and derail the human trials." Greg's expression resolute. "What's our next move?" The Admiral's eyes glinted with perseverance. "We're going to use their plan against them. Publicly, we'll announce that you're undertaking a survival challenge on Zarkon." Quinn's antennae twitched with concern. The desert planet? But the temperature fluctuations alone would. "Exactly," Zyrax interjected. "It's a ruse. In reality, we're transporting you to a hidden base on one of our Arcturian moons. There, You'll undergo intensive training to enhance your abilities. Greg nodded, understanding the strategy. And the conspirators? They'll be forced to act, Zyrax replied. Meanwhile, our forces will conduct raids across multiple planets, targeting suspected members of the conspiracy. Within hours, Greg and Quinn found themselves aboard a stealth ship bound for the Arcturian moon. As they entered the base, Greg marveled at the advanced technology surrounding them. The air hummed with energy, and strange devices lined the walls. An Arcturian scientist approached, her silvery skin reflecting the harsh light. Mr. Davis, we'll begin your enhancements immediately. The process will be intense, but necessary for your survival. Over the next few days, Greg's body underwent remarkable changes. Arcturian technology, combined with Quinn's expertise in human physiology, pushed his physical abilities to new heights. His muscles became denser, his reflexes sharper, and his senses more acute. During a training session, Greg effortlessly lifted a weight that would have been impossible for him just days ago. Quinn watched, her eyes wide with a mix of scientific fascination and something deeper. Your cellular structure is adapting at an incredible rate, she said, running a scanner over his arm. These changes, they're beyond anything we've seen in humans before. Greg flexed his hand, feeling the new strength coursing through him. Is it permanent? Quinn's antennae drooped slightly. We don't know. This is uncharted territory, Greg. As the days passed, their isolation on the moon base brought Greg and Quinn closer. Late one night, they stood together in the observation dome, gazing at the stars. Do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing? Greg asked softly. Quinn turned to him, her eyes reflecting the starlight. Every day. But then I look at you, at what you've accomplished, and I know humanity deserves its place out here. Their hands intertwined, a gesture that bridged the gap between their species. The moment was interrupted by a sudden, blaring alarm. Intruder alert! All personnel to battle stations. Greg and Quinn raced to the command center. Admiral Zyrax's hologram flickered to life. We've been compromised. A mercenary force is attacking the base. Mr. Davis, this is no longer a drill. Adrenaline surged through Greg's enhanced body as he grabbed a nearby weapon. I'm ready. The first wave of mercenaries breached the outer defenses. Greg moved with inhuman speed, his newly honed reflexes allowing him to anticipate and counter their attacks. Quinn's voice came through his earpiece, guiding him with tactical information. Their weapons are Fidorian plasma casters, she reported. Aim for the power cores on their backs. Greg adjusted his aim, taking down 3 mercenaries in rapid succession. As he fought alongside the Arcturian security forces, he caught glimpses of familiar faces among the attackers. One mercenary removed his helmet, revealing reptilian features. Greg's eyes widened in recognition. Vex, the reptilian ambassador sneered. You should have accepted our offer, human. Now, you'll never see your planet again. Greg dodged a plasma blast, rolling behind cover. Quinn, are you seeing this? Vex is with the mercenaries. Confirmed, Quinn replied, her voice tight with tension. Greg, be careful. Vex's presence suggests this conspiracy goes deeper than we thought. The battle raged on, with Greg and the defenders slowly pushing back the mercenary force. As the last of the attackers retreated, Admiral Zyrax's hologram reappeared. Well fought, Mr. Davis, he said, his tone grim. But this attack has forced our hand. We've received intelligence that the conspirators are planning a strike against the Galactic Council itself. Greg caught his breath, the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. What's our next move? We're returning to the heart of it all, Zyrax replied. It's time to expose this conspiracy and complete your trials. The future of humanity in the Federation depends on it. As Greg and Quinn prepared to leave the relative safety of the moon base, they shared a moment alone. Quinn's hand rested on Greg's chest, feeling his enhanced heartbeat. "Whatever happens," she said softly, "know that you've already proven humanity's worth. To the galaxy and to me." Greg pulled her close, their foreheads touching in an intimate gesture. "Together, then?" Quinn nodded, her antennae brushing against his skin. "Together." They boarded the stealth ship, the alien artifact and evidence of the conspiracy secured. As the ship rose from the moon's surface, Greg looked out at the vast expanse of space. The Galactic Council headquarters lay ahead, and with it, the final challenge that would determine humanity's place among the stars. Stars. The future of humanity rested upon their shoulders as they approached the heart of galactic civilization. As their stealth ship neared the Galactic Council headquarters, Greg's enhanced senses picked up on an unusual flurry of activity. He leaned forward, studying the sensors with newfound acuity. "Quinn, are you seeing this?" he asked, gesturing to the display. Quinn's antennae twitched as she analyzed the data. "Affirmative. The traffic patterns are highly irregular. These ships, they're from multiple factions, far more than we'd expect for a standard council session." Admiral Zyrax's hologram flickered to life, his expression grim. "Our worst fears are confirmed. This is likely the beginning of the conspirators' strike against the council. Proceed with extreme caution." Greg nodded, his enhanced muscles tensing in anticipation. "Understood, Admiral. We're going in." The stealth ship glided silently through the chaos, slipping past the converging alien vessels. With practiced precision, they docked at a seldom-used maintenance bay, the ship's cloaking technology ensuring their arrival went unnoticed. As the airlock hissed open, Greg took point, his enhanced senses on high alert. The service tunnels stretched before them, a labyrinth of pipes and conduits. Greg's improved physical abilities allowed him to navigate the complex network with ease, guiding the team past security checkpoints and potential threats. Quinn worked furiously on her datapad, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. "I've tapped into the station's internal sensors," she whispered. "The main power core and primary communication array have been compromised. Saboteurs are already in place." Greg's heart made. "We need to move faster. The council chambers aren't far now." As they rounded a corner, Greg's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of muffled voices and the distinct click of weapons being armed. He held up a hand, signaling the team to stop. Peering around a junction, he saw a group of Zorgan mercenaries planting explosive devices along critical structural points. Their scaled hands moved with practiced efficiency, attaching the bombs to key support beams. Greg turned to Quinn, his voice barely audible. "We can't let those explosives detonate. I'm going in." Before she could protest, Greg sprang into action. His enhanced muscles propelled him forward with incredible speed, catching the mercenaries off guard. The first Zorgan went down with a well-placed strike to its nerve cluster, its weapon clattering to the ground. The others quickly recovered, turning their weapons on Greg. But his newly honed reflexes allowed him to anticipate their moves, ducking and weaving between plasma bolts with inhuman agility. Quinn's voice crackled in his earpiece. "Greg, I'm manipulating the station's environmental controls. Brace yourself." Suddenly, the gravity in the corridor fluctuated wildly. The Zorgan mercenaries stumbled, their equilibrium thrown off. Greg, prepared for the change, used it to his advantage. He launched himself off a wall, using the decreased gravity to deliver a devastating series of blows to his disoriented opponents. In a matter of seconds, the fight was over. Greg stood among the unconscious Zorgans, his breathing only slightly elevated. "Nice work with the gravity, Quinn," he said, a hint of admiration in his voice. "We make a good team," she replied, her antennae curling in what Greg had come to recognize as a smile. "But we're not out of danger yet." The station's data hub is just ahead. If we can upload our evidence there, we can broadcast the truth to every species in the Federation. They split from the main group, racing towards the central data hub. But as they approached, Greg's enhanced vision picked out a heavily armed contingent guarding the entrance. "Wait," he hissed, pulling Quinn back. "Those aren't regular security forces." Quinn's eyes widened as she recognized the figure at the center of the group. Dr. Xanthor? But he's supposed to be one of the Council's most trusted advisors. Greg's expression hardened. "Looks like the conspiracy goes deeper than we thought. We need a new plan." They retreated, only to find their path blocked by more corrupt security forces. With enemies closing in from both sides, Greg made a split-second decision. He grabbed Quinn's hand and pulled her into a nearby observation deck. The door sealed behind them with a hiss, but Greg knew it wouldn't hold for long. He scanned the room, his enhanced mind rapidly assessing their options. Quinn's voice cut through his thoughts. "Greg, look at this." The alien artifact they had recovered earlier was pulsing with an ethereal light. Quinn's antennae quivered with excitement as she ran a quick scan. "It's reacting to the radiation from that nearby star," she explained, her voice filled with wonder. I think this might be a key to some kind of ancient alien technology. Something that could change everything." The sound of pounding on the door snapped them back to reality. Greg's eyes darted to the airlock controls, a daring plan forming in his mind. "Quinn, I have an idea, but it's risky," he said, moving towards the control panel. She nodded, trust evident in her eyes. "Whatever it is, I'm with you." Greg's enhanced strength allowed him to override the airlock's safety protocols. With a violent hiss, the observation deck depressurized. Their pursuers were forced back, but Greg and Quinn now found themselves trapped with a rapidly dwindling air supply. As alarms blared throughout the station and the structure shuddered from distant explosions, Greg and Quinn worked feverishly to find a way out. The physical proximity and high-stakes situation intensified the connection between them. For a moment, their eyes met, and they shared a passionate embrace, the danger around them heightening their emotions. But the moment was fleeting. They quickly refocused on the task at hand, acutely aware that the fate of humanity and the entire Galactic Federation hung in the balance. Outside, chaos reigned. Multiple explosions rocked the station, and the Galactic Council fell into disarray. Through the observation deck's viewport, Greg could see ships firing on each other, alliances crumbling in real time. Quinn's datapad beeped urgently. "Greg, I've intercepted a transmission. Ambassador Cross has taken control of the main communication array. He's preparing to broadcast a message framing humanity for the attack." Greg's enhanced mind raced through their options. They were trapped, outnumbered, and running out of air. But they had the artifact, and with it, the potential to unlock a power that could turn the tide. As the station shuddered around them and their oxygen levels dropped dangerously low, Greg and Quinn knew their next moves would determine the future of human-alien relations and potentially reshape the entire galactic landscape. Greg turned to Quinn, drive etched on his face. "We need to get out of here, stop that broadcast, and expose the truth. Any ideas on how to activate this artifact?" Quinn's antennae twitched as she examined the pulsing object. "I have a theory, but we'll need to get closer to that star. And fast." With time running out and the stakes higher than ever, Greg and Quinn prepared to make their most daring move yet. The future of multiple worlds hung in the balance, and they were the only ones who could tip the scales. Scales. The future of multiple worlds hung in the balance, and they were the only ones who could tip the scales. Greg's eyes darted around the observation deck, his enhanced vision scanning for any possible escape route. Suddenly, his gaze locked onto a maintenance panel partially hidden behind a console. "Quinn, look." He pointed to the panel. "That might be our way out." Without hesitation, Greg moved towards the panel, his enhanced muscles tensing as he gripped the edges. With a grunt of effort, he pried it open, revealing a network of narrow ventilation shafts beyond. Quinn's antennae twitched with excitement. Brilliant! The ventilation system could lead us to the central hub. As alarms continued to blare and the station shuddered from distant explosions, Greg and Quinn squeezed into the tight confines of the shaft. The metal was cold against their skin as they began to crawl through the labyrinthine system. Greg took the lead, his enhanced senses allowing him to navigate the complex network of tunnels. The air grew thinner as they progressed, and Quinn's breathing became more labored. "Hang in there," Greg whispered, reaching back to give her hand a reassuring squeeze. As they crawled, fragments of conversations drifted up through the vents. Greg's enhanced hearing picked up snippets of panicked discussions and hurried orders. "Human saboteur. Council compromised. Activate the failsafe." Quinn's eyes widened. "Greg, are you hearing this? The conspiracy is even more extensive than we thought." They pressed on, the tight space forcing them into close proximity. Greg could feel the warmth of Quinn's breath on the back of his neck, and despite the dire circumstances, he found himself acutely aware of her presence. Suddenly, the shaft trembled violently. Greg threw out an arm to steady Quinn as they heard a deep, resonating voice echo through the station's communication system. "Attention, citizens of the Galactic Federation. This is Ambassador Cross. We have uncovered irrefutable evidence of human treachery. Even now, human agents seek to destroy the station and plunge our peaceful coalition into chaos. We must act swiftly and decisively to neutralize this threat." Quinn gasped. "He's broadcasting the false narrative. We need to hurry." They increased their pace, ignoring the burning in their muscles as they navigated the twisting shafts. Greg's enhanced hearing allowed them to avoid detection by security patrols, and they narrowly escaped being crushed as a damaged section of the ventilation system collapsed behind them. As they neared the central hub, Quinn's antennae began to quiver. "Wait," she whispered, pulling out her datapad. "I'm detecting a weak point in the station's internal security network. If I can just—" Her fingers flew across the holographic interface, and suddenly, a hidden access panel slid open in front of them. They emerged into the central hub, undetected amidst the chaos. The room was a hive of activity, with alien technicians frantically working at various consoles. In the center, a massive holographic display showed the false broadcast spreading across the galaxy. Greg and Quinn shared a determined look. They had to act fast. As Quinn rushed to a nearby terminal to upload their evidence and counteract the false broadcast, Greg positioned himself between her and the room's entrance, ready to defend against any threat. Suddenly, alarms blared and the doors to the central hub slid open. Dr. Xanthor burst in, flanked by a team of heavily armed security forces. "Stop them!" Xanthor roared, his eyes fixed on Greg and Quinn. Greg's muscles tensed as he prepared for combat. But before anyone could move, a strange energy pulse emanated from the artifact in Quinn's possession. The radiation interacted with the station systems, causing consoles to spark and security doors to slam shut, trapping Xanthor's forces outside the central hub. "What's happening?" Greg asked, bewildered. Quinn's antennae twitched with excitement. "The artifact. It's reacting to the station's technology. This might be the key we need." As Xanthor and his team pounded on the sealed doors, Quinn worked feverishly to complete the data transfer. Greg stood ready, his enhanced senses on high alert for any new threats. Suddenly, the station rocked with a series of explosions. Through the hub's viewports, Greg saw a familiar ship leading a fleet against the conspirators' forces. "It's Admiral Zyrax," he exclaimed. "He's broken through their defenses." With Zyrax's forces providing a much-needed distraction, Greg and Quinn seized their chance. They downloaded the last of the evidence and prepared to make their escape from the central hub. As they reached the exit, Quinn turned to Greg, her eyes shining with purpose. "We need to get to the council chambers. It's the only way to ensure the truth is heard." Greg nodded, his dedication matching hers. Together, then, Quinn's antennae curled in what Greg now recognized as a smile. Together, they burst out of the central hub, ready to face whatever challenges lay between them and the council chambers, the fate of humanity and the entire Galactic Federation hanging in the balance. Balance. With a shared nod of persistence, Greg and Quinn raced towards the council chambers, their footsteps echoing through the chaotic corridors of the station. As they approached their destination, the station's lighting flickered, casting eerie shadows across their path. The distant sound of weapons fire and shouting grew louder, a stark reminder of the battle raging throughout the facility. Greg's enhanced senses picked up movement ahead. He pulled Quinn into an alcove just as a group of security forces rushed past, their weapons drawn. "That was close," Quinn whispered, her antennae twitching nervously. Greg peered around the corner, his enhanced vision scanning for threats. "Coast is clear. Let's move." They sprinted the final stretch to the council chambers, bursting through the ornate doors with a resounding crash. The assembled alien dignitaries turned in shock, their conversations cut short by the sudden intrusion. "Stop the broadcast," Greg shouted, his voice carrying across the chamber. "You're being deceived." Before anyone could react, Quinn rushed to the central console, her fingers flying over the controls as she uploaded their evidence. The chamber's massive view screens flickered, then came to life with images and data exposing the conspiracy. The room erupted into chaos as counselors from various species shouted accusations and demands for explanations. In the midst of the uproar, Admiral Zyrax entered, flanked by a team of loyal security officers. "Order!" Zyrax's voice boomed, silencing the chamber. "We have confirmation of a widespread conspiracy. This human and his companion have provided crucial evidence that we must examine immediately." As the gravity of the situation sank in, the council chambers became a flurry of activity. Greg and Quinn found themselves at the center of intense questioning and debriefing sessions that stretched on for hours. Days blurred together as investigations were launched, testimonies were given, and the full extent of the conspiracy was gradually uncovered. Greg and Quinn rarely had a moment to themselves, constantly pulled into meetings, interviews, and strategy sessions. Nearly a week after the fateful events at the station, Greg stood before a mirror in his temporary quarters, adjusting the formal attire he'd been provided for his appearance before the newly formed special committee. The fabric felt strange against his skin, a reminder of how much his life had changed in such a short time. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called out. Quinn entered, her antennae curling in a smile as she saw him. "You clean up nicely," she said, her eyes twinkling with a mix of admiration and something deeper. Greg returned her smile, taking in her appearance. She was dressed in the formal robes of a Federation scientist, the garment highlighting her alien features in a way that made his breath catch. "You look," he began, but words failed him. Quinn moved closer, her hand reaching out to straighten his collar. "I know," she said softly. "We haven't had much time to talk about us." Greg nodded, acutely aware of her proximity. "Things have been a bit hectic." "That's an understatement," Quinn chuckled. Her expression grew serious. "Greg, whatever happens in there today, I want you to know." Another knock interrupted them, followed by the gruff voice of Admiral Zyrax. "It's time, human. The committee is ready." Greg took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. He met Quinn's eyes one last time, seeing his own mix of dedication and uncertainty reflected there. "Good luck," Quinn whispered, giving his hand a quick squeeze before stepping back. As Greg followed Admiral Zyrax through the winding corridors of the newly established committee headquarters, he couldn't help but marvel at how quickly things had changed. The station buzzed with a newfound energy, representatives from various species working together to rebuild trust and restructure the Federation's governing bodies. They arrived at a set of imposing doors, guarded by a pair of stoic Zorgan security officers. Admiral Zyrax turned to Greg, his expression unreadable. "Remember, human," Zyrax said, his voice low, "the fate of your species rests on your performance here. The committee will be thorough and unforgiving in their assessment." Greg nodded, his enhanced mind already cataloging potential questions and strategies. As the door swung open, revealing a semicircular chamber filled with alien dignitaries, he stepped forward into the unknown. The committee members sat in tiered seats, their diverse forms a testament to the vastness of the Federation. At the center, a stern-looking Andorian rose, her blue skin shimmering under the chamber's lights. "Gregory Smith of Earth," she announced, her voice carrying a hint of static from the translation device. "You stand before the special committee to prove humanity's worthiness for Federation membership. Are you prepared to undergo our evaluation?" Greg straightened, meeting the Andorian's gaze. "I am," he replied, his voice steady despite the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "Then let us begin," the Andorian said, tapping a control on her podium. A holographic display sprang to life in the center of the chamber, showing a series of complex physical and mental challenges. As Greg moved to the designated area, he caught a glimpse of Quinn entering a side door, her arms full of research materials. Their eyes met briefly, a silent exchange of support passing between them. The first test began, a simulated combat scenario designed to push Greg's enhanced abilities to their limits. As he dodged holographic projectiles and outmaneuvered virtual opponents, he could hear the murmurs of surprise from the committee members. Sweat beaded on his brow as he completed the challenge, his performance surpassing all previous records. The chamber fell silent, the committee members exchanging meaningful glances. Before they could comment, alarms blared throughout the facility. The holographic display flickered, then changed to show a live feed from Quinn's research lab. The alien artifact was pulsing with an intense energy, gravity fluctuating wildly around it. "We need to evacuate." Quinn's voice came through the speakers, tinged with urgency. "The artifact is reacting to something, and I can't control it." The committee erupted into panicked discussions. Greg's enhanced hearing picked up fragments of fearful speculation and accusations. In that moment of chaos, Greg felt a presence at his side. He turned to find Vex, the reptilian ambassador, standing uncomfortably close. "Human," Vex hissed, his forked tongue flicking out. "I have information that could save us all, but I require assurances." Greg's mind raced, weighing the potential consequences of Vex's offer against the immediate danger. As the artifact's energy continued to build, threatening to tear the station apart, he knew he had to make a decision that would shape the future of human-alien relations for generations to come. "Come." Greg's mind raced, weighing the potential consequences of Vex's offer against the immediate danger. As the artifact's energy continued to build, threatening to tear the station apart, he knew he had to make a decision that would shape the future of human-alien relations for generations to come. "What kind of assurances?" Greg asked, his voice low and urgent. Vex's eyes narrowed. "Immunity from prosecution and a seat on the new council, should your species gain admission." Before Greg could respond, the chamber doors burst open. Quinn rushed in, her antennae quivering with excitement and urgency. She clutched the alien artifact, which pulsed with an otherworldly glow. "Wait," she called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. "The artifact has revealed new information. It's crucial to these proceedings." The committee members, who had been on the verge of calling for an evacuation, paused. The Andorian chairperson raised a hand, silencing the room. "Proceed, scientist," she said, her tone a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Quinn hurried to the center of the chamber, joining Greg on the raised platform. As she approached, the artifact's glow intensified, casting strange shadows across the alien faces surrounding them. Greg cleared his throat, acutely aware of the weight of the moment. "Esteemed members of the committee," he began, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "I stand before you not just as a representative of humanity, but as a testament to what we can achieve through cooperation and understanding." As he spoke, detailing humanity's achievements and potential contributions to the Federation, Quinn worked feverishly to analyze the artifact's output. Her fingers danced across her datapad, decoding the complex patterns of energy emanating from the device. Suddenly, the artifact projected a massive holographic star map of the galaxy. Gasps of awe echoed through the chamber as the committee members witnessed the unveiling of a network of ancient transportation hubs, long forgotten by the current Federation members. "This discovery," Quinn explained, her voice filled with excitement, "could revolutionize interstellar travel. Initial calculations suggest we could reduce journey times between distant worlds from years to mere days." The chamber erupted into a flurry of discussions. Some committee members leaned forward, their eyes gleaming with the possibilities this technology presented. Others recoiled, clearly concerned about the implications of entrusting such power to a newly admitted species. As the debate intensified, the chamber doors swung open once more. Admiral Zyrak strode in, his face grave. "Members of the committee," he announced, his voice cutting through the din, "we have uncovered evidence linking several individuals in this room to the conspiracy against humanity." The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. Accusations flew, alliances shifted, and the carefully maintained decorum of the proceedings shattered. Amidst the chaos, the alien artifact's glow intensified. It began to interface with the chamber systems, accessing and displaying classified Federation databases. Centuries of hidden agendas, secret alliances, and suppressed technologies across multiple species were laid bare for all to see. Greg, recognizing the potential for conflict, stepped forward. "Esteemed colleagues," he said, his voice commanding attention, "we stand at a crossroads. The secrets of the past have been revealed, but they need not define our future. I propose a complete restructuring of the Federation, based on the principles of transparency and equal representation." As he outlined his vision for a more interconnected galactic community, Quinn noticed the artifact reacting to his words. The holographic display shifted, showing potential futures based on Greg's proposal. Images of thriving, diverse worlds working in harmony filled the chamber. The committee members, faced with the exposure of their secrets and the promise of a new era, began to soften their stance. Even the most skeptical representatives found themselves swayed by Greg's impassioned speech and the artifact's visions of a brighter future. In a surprising turn, Vex stepped forward. The reptilian ambassador's scales shimmered as he addressed the assembly. "I must confess my role in exposing the conspiracy," he said, his forked tongue flicking nervously. "But I have seen the error of my ways. I throw my full support behind the humans' proposal." The endorsement from a respected Federation member sent murmurs of approval through the crowd. The tide of opinion was turning. As the session neared its conclusion, the Andorian chairperson called for an unprecedented vote. "We will decide not only on Earth's admission to the Federation," she announced, "but also on the implementation of these proposed reforms." Greg and Quinn exchanged a look of cautious optimism as the voting commenced. The artifact pulsed with energy, its glow casting an otherworldly light across the chamber. As the final votes were tallied, a hush fell over the assembly. The chairperson's voice rang out, clear and strong. "By an overwhelming majority, this committee votes to admit Earth into the Federation and to enact the proposed reforms. Let this day mark the beginning of a new age for our galactic community." Cheers erupted throughout the chamber. Greg felt a wave of relief wash over him. tempered by the knowledge that the real work was just beginning. As alien representatives crowded around him and Quinn, eager to establish diplomatic relations, he caught her eye. In that moment, amidst the chaos and excitement, Greg saw something in Quinn's expression that transcended their professional accomplishments. Their shared journey had forged a connection that defied the boundaries of their respective species. As they made their way through the throng of well-wishers and newly minted allies, Greg leaned close to Quinn. "Looks like we've got our work cut out for us," he said, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Quinn's antennae curled in what Greg now recognized as her own unique smile. "Indeed," she replied, her voice warm. "But I can't think of anyone I'd rather face these challenges with." Their moment was interrupted by Admiral Zyrax, who approached with a datapad in hand. "We've prepared a shuttle to take you back to Earth," he said, his gruff voice tinged with respect. "Your planet's leaders need to be briefed on these developments immediately." Greg nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. As he and Quinn followed Zyrax towards the docking bay, the artifact in Quinn's possession pulsed with energy, as if sensing the adventures that lay ahead. The shuttle's sleek form came into view, its hull gleaming under the station's lights. As they prepared to board, Greg took one last look at the bustling activity around them. The station hummed with a new energy, filled with beings from across the galaxy working together to forge a new future. Quinn placed a hand on his arm, her touch grounding him in the moment. "Ready?" she asked, her eyes shining with a mix of excitement and commitment. Greg took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. "Ready," he replied, stepping forward into the shuttle and towards the next chapter of their interstellar journey. Adventure. As the shuttle's engines hummed to life, Greg settled into his seat, feeling a mix of anticipation and responsibility for the task ahead. The journey back to Earth began smoothly, with Quinn reviewing data from the artifact on her datapad, while Greg prepared his thoughts for the upcoming briefing. However, their peaceful flight was abruptly interrupted by an urgent communication from Admiral Zyrax. The Admiral's holographic image flickered to life in the shuttle's cockpit, his expression grave. "Smith, Dr. Quinn, we have a critical situation. A group of extremist aliens opposed to Earth's Federation membership has launched an attack on Earth's orbital defense stations. The situation is dire." Greg's muscles tensed as he processed the information. "What are your orders, Admiral?" "Redirect to the nearest station under attack. We need your expertise on the ground immediately." Without hesitation, Greg altered their course, the shuttle's engines roaring as they accelerated towards the conflict. Quinn's antennae twitched with concern as she recalibrated her equipment for the impending battle. As they approached the defense station, the scene that greeted them was one of chaos. Federation peacekeeping forces were engaged in a fierce firefight with the extremist attackers. Energy weapons flashed against the backdrop of space, and debris from damaged sections of the station floated ominously. Greg maneuvered the shuttle through the crossfire, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to dodge incoming fire with precision. They docked at an emergency airlock, and as the doors hissed open, Greg turned to Quinn. "I'll lead the counteroffensive. Can you work on fortifying the station's defenses?" Quinn nodded, her eyes gleaming with perseverance. "I'll coordinate with Earth's military and see what I can do about those sabotage systems." They split up as soon as they entered the station. Greg sprinted towards the sound of battle, his enhanced speed allowing him to cover ground quickly. He arrived at a junction where Federation forces were pinned down by extremist fire. "Hold your positions," Greg shouted as he assessed the situation. He spotted a piece of debris large enough to use as a shield and, with his augmented strength, lifted it effortlessly. "On my mark, provide covering fire." Greg charged forward, using the makeshift shield to absorb enemy fire. The Federation forces, emboldened by his arrival, laid down suppressing fire. In a matter of moments, Greg had crossed the no-man's land and engaged the extremists in close combat. His enhanced abilities gave him a significant advantage. He moved with fluid grace, disarming opponents and incapacitating them with precise strikes. The tide of battle began to turn as more Federation forces pushed forward behind Greg's advance. Meanwhile, Quinn had made her way to the station's control center. Her fingers flew over the consoles as she worked to undo the sabotage inflicted by the extremists. Come on, she muttered, her antennae twitching with concentration. A sudden explosion rocked the station, nearly throwing Quinn off her feet. She steadied herself and continued working, knowing that every second counted. Through the station's internal communications, she coordinated with Earth's military, directing reinforcements to critical areas. As Greg pushed deeper into extremist-held territory, he encountered their leader, a massive, reptilian alien who towered over him. The alien's scales glinted in the harsh light of the station, and his eyes narrowed as he spotted Greg. So, this is the human who thinks he can stand against us, the alien sneered, his voice a low growl. I am Kroll, and I will show the galaxy the true weakness of your species. Greg stood his ground, meeting Kroll's gaze. I'm Gregory Smith, and I'm here to prove that humanity deserves its place in the Federation. Kroll lunged forward with surprising speed for his size. Greg barely managed to dodge the initial attack, feeling the rush of air as Kroll's claws missed him by inches. The two began a deadly dance, with Kroll's raw power matched against Greg's enhanced agility and reflexes. The fight was intense and brutal. Greg used every trick he had learned, combining his new abilities with human ingenuity. He vaulted over Kroll, using the alien's own momentum against him. Kroll retaliated with a sweeping tail strike that caught Greg in the ribs, sending him crashing into a nearby wall. As Greg and Kroll continued their fierce duel, Quinn made a breakthrough in the control center. Yes, she exclaimed as she bypassed the final firewall. The station's main weapon systems hummed to life, giving the Federation forces a much-needed advantage. Greg, sensing the shift in the battle, pressed his attack against Kroll. He feinted left, then delivered a powerful right hook that staggered the alien leader. Kroll stumbled backward, his eyes widening in disbelief. Impossible, Kroll snarled. No human could. Greg didn't let him finish. With a final, decisive move, he grappled Kroll and used the alien's own weight to throw him to the ground. Kroll hit the deck hard, the impact echoing through the station. At that moment, the station's weapons came online fully. The extremist forces, seeing their tactical advantage evaporate and their leader defeated, began a hasty retreat. Federation forces cheered as they watched the enemy ships flee. Greg stood over the subdued Kroll, his chest heaving from the exertion of the fight. He activated his comm link. Quinn, status report? We've done it, Greg. Quinn's voice came through, tinged with relief and excitement. The station is secure and the extremists are in full retreat. As the adrenaline of battle faded, Greg realized the full impact of what they had accomplished. They had not only defended Earth, but had also demonstrated humanity's value to the galactic community. The incident would undoubtedly strengthen Earth's position within the Federation. Greg made his way back to the control center, where he found Quinn coordinating the final stages of the defense operation. As their eyes met, a wordless understanding passed between them. They had faced this challenge together, and their bond had only grown stronger. As the situation on the station stabilized, Greg and Quinn prepared to finally make their way to Earth's surface. The next phase of their journey was about to begin, with new challenges and responsibilities awaiting them. The battle was won, but their role in shaping humanity's future in the Federation was just beginning. The battle was won, but their role in shaping humanity's future in the Federation was just beginning. As the shuttle docked at Earth's primary spaceport, Greg and Quinn were immediately whisked away to a high-security briefing room. The faces of Earth's leaders, A mix of anticipation and concern greeted them as they entered. Greg had barely begun his report when an aide burst in, handing a data pad to the Secretary General. "We've just received an urgent communique from Admiral Zyrax," the Secretary General announced, her brow furrowed. "You're both needed at the Federation's primary research facility immediately." Without time to catch their breath, Greg and Quinn found themselves aboard another shuttle, this time bound for the facility. As they approached, the massive structure came into view, its gleaming spires and domed laboratories a testament to the Federation's scientific prowess. Admiral Zyrax met them at the entrance, his tentacles waving in agitation. "Smith, Dr. Quinn, follow me," he said, leading them through a maze of corridors. "We've made a significant breakthrough in understanding the artifact." They entered a vast laboratory where a tall, slender alien with iridescent skin and large, expressive eyes stood before a holographic display. The alien turned as they entered, her movements fluid and graceful. "Dr. Lyra," Zyrax said, "meet Gregory Smith and Dr. Quinn. They're the ones who brought us the artifact." Dr. Lyra's eyes widened with interest. "Ah, the human Andorian team. Your discovery may change the course of galactic history." She gestured to the hologram, which showed a complex network of interconnected spheres. "The artifact you found is part of a larger system, designed to terraform planets rapidly." Greg whistled low. "Terraform planets? That's incredible." "And potentially dangerous," Quinn added, her antennae twitching with concern. Dr. Lyra nodded. "Precisely. The Federation Council is worried about the potential misuse of such technology. That's why we've been tasked with leading a joint human-alien expedition to an uninhabited planet, where we believe another component of the system is hidden." As Greg and Quinn absorbed this information, an alert sounded from a nearby console. Admiral Zyrax rushed over, his expression darkening as he read the message. "We have a situation on Earth," he growled. "A group of human extremists, opposed to our alliance with the Federation, has launched attacks on alien embassies across the planet." Greg's eyes sharp. "I need to address this," he said, turning to Quinn and Dr. Lyra. "Can you two start preparations for the expedition?" Quinn nodded, though Greg noticed a flicker of something, concern, disappointment, cross her face. "We'll handle it. Go do what you need to do." As Greg departed for Earth, Quinn and Dr. Lyra dove into their work. They spent long hours analyzing data from the artifact, developing safeguards for the terraforming technology. Their collaboration yielded significant breakthroughs, but Quinn couldn't help noticing the easy rapport between Greg and the Centaurian scientist during their periodic check-ins. Meanwhile, Greg found himself thrust into the role of mediator and spokesperson. He crisscrossed the globe, meeting with government officials, addressing public gatherings, and even confronting extremist leaders directly. His status as a hero of the recent space battle lent weight to his words as he called for understanding and cooperation between humans and aliens. After a grueling week, Greg returned to the research facility, exhausted but satisfied. The situation on Earth had stabilized, though tension still simmered beneath the surface. He found Quinn and Dr. Lyra in the lab, putting the finishing touches on their expedition plans. "We're calling the planet Novatera," Dr. Lyra explained, pulling up a holographic map. "Our scans indicate the presence of ancient structures beneath the surface." Greg nodded, trying to focus on the briefing despite his fatigue. He couldn't help but notice the easy familiarity between Quinn and Dr. Lyra, born from their days of intense collaboration. A twinge of something, jealousy, surprised him, and he pushed the feeling aside. The next day, their expedition departed for Novatera. As their ship entered orbit, Greg's enhanced vision picked out details on the planet's surface that others missed. "There," he said, pointing to a section of the map. "I can see patterns in the terrain. It's subtle, but definitely artificial." They landed near the coordinates Greg had identified. As the team set up their base camp, Greg's senses remained on high alert, picking up minute vibrations and energy signatures from beneath the ground. "This way," he said, leading them to a seemingly blank rock face. His fingers found invisible seams, and with a push of his enhanced strength, a hidden door slid open. The team entered cautiously, lights illuminating a vast chamber filled with alien technology. As they explored deeper, Greg's reflexes saved them more than once from hidden traps and automated defense systems. In a massive underground facility, they discovered the terraforming equipment. As Quinn and Dr. Lyra examined the technology, Greg kept watch, his enhanced senses allowing him to detect the slightest changes in their environment. Suddenly, the facility hummed to life. Panels lit up, and a deep thrumming filled the air. "We must have triggered something," Dr. Lyra shouted over the noise. Robotic sentries emerged from hidden alcoves, weapons powering up. Greg sprang into action, his augmented speed and strength allowing him to disable the machines before they could harm the team. As the dust settled, Quinn and Dr. Lyra huddled over a data terminal. "Greg, you need to see this," Quinn called, her voice tight with excitement and apprehension. The screen displayed logs in an alien language, which Dr. Lyra translated. This terraforming network. It wasn't just for transforming planets. It was meant to create new homes for a species fleeing some great disaster. The implications of their discovery hung heavy in the air. Before they could fully process the information, a priority message came through from Admiral Zyrax. "The extremist group has regrouped," Zyrax's hologram reported grimly. "They're threatening to destroy Federation headquarters unless Earth withdraws from the Alliance." Greg's mind raced, considering their options. His gaze fell on the terraforming equipment surrounding them. "What if we use this as leverage?" he suggested. The promise of new habitable worlds could address the resource concerns driving much of the anti-Federation sentiment. As the team debated the strategy, proximity alarms blared. An unauthorized ship was approaching Novatera. Greg organized a small team to intercept, suspecting a connection to the extremist threat. They surrounded the landed ship, weapons ready. The hatch opened, revealing a familiar face. Vex, the reptilian ambassador. "Hold your fire," Vex called out, his hands raised. "I have vital information about the extremists' true motives. We've all been deceived." Greg lowered his weapon, but remained cautious. "Explain," he demanded. As the others looked on, tensions high and the future of human-alien relations hanging precariously in the balance. Balance. Greg's enhanced senses tingled with anticipation as Vex stepped forward, his scales glistening in the alien sunlight. "I've uncovered evidence that the extremist group is being manipulated by a shadowy consortium within the Federation," Vex explained, his voice low and urgent. "They're after something far more valuable than political leverage. They want control of the terraforming technology we've discovered here." Before Greg could respond, a tremor shook the ground beneath their feet. Quinn's voice crackled over the comm system. "Greg, we've got a problem. The facility's systems are activating on their own." Greg sprinted back to the underground complex, Vex close on his heels. As they entered the main chamber, they found Quinn and Dr. Lyra frantically working at the alien consoles. Holographic displays flickered with incomprehensible data, and a deep thrumming reverberated through the structure. "What's happening?" Greg demanded, his eyes scanning the room for potential threats. Dr. Lyra's fingers danced across the alien interface. "The partial activation of the terraforming system has triggered an automated sequence. It's altering Novatera's atmosphere at an alarming rate." Quinn's antennae twitched with concern. "If we don't stabilize it, the changes could cascade out of control. We need to stay and fix this." Greg nodded, his mind already racing through the implications. "Vex, contact Admiral Zyrax. Let him know we'll be delayed in returning." As Vex departed to relay the message, Greg joined Quinn and Dr. Lyra at the consoles. Hours blended into days as they worked tirelessly to understand and control the ancient technology. Greg's enhanced stamina allowed him to push through exhaustion, but he couldn't help noticing the easy rapport developing between Quinn and Dr. Lyra as they collaborated. On the 5th day, a breakthrough came. "Look at this," Dr. Lyra called out, her large eyes wide with excitement. She pulled up a three-dimensional map of Novatera, overlaid with swirling patterns of energy. "If we can redirect these flows here and here, we should be able to stabilize the atmospheric changes." As Quinn and Dr. Lyra fine-tuned their approach, Greg's heightened hearing picked up a faint, rhythmic sound coming from behind a nearby wall. "Wait," he said, holding up a hand. "Do you hear that?" Following the sound, Greg discovered a hidden panel. With a gentle push of his enhanced strength, it slid open, revealing a dimly lit chamber. Inside, a sleek metal pod stood silent sentinel. "It's a cryogenic unit," Dr. Lyra breathed, her slender fingers tracing the unfamiliar designs. "And it's still active." Before they could discuss their next move, the pod systems hummed to life. Steam hissed from vents as the cover slowly lifted, revealing a figure within. As the mist cleared, they found themselves face to face with a being unlike any they had encountered. Clearly a member of the long-extinct race that had created the terraforming network. The alien's eyes fluttered open, taking in the group before her with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. She spoke, her voice melodious yet alien, in a language none of them understood. Dr. Lyra activated her universal translator, adjusting it to analyze the new language. After a moment, the alien's words became clear. "I am Zara, last of the architects. Who are you, and how long have I slept?" As Greg and Quinn exchanged stunned glances, alarms blared throughout the facility. Quinn rushed to a nearby console, her fingers flying over the controls. "We've got multiple ships entering the atmosphere," she reported, her voice tense. "It's the extremist group. They're launching an attack." Greg's body tensed, ready for action. "Quinn, Dr. Lyra, see if you can activate any defense systems this place might have. I'll coordinate with our security team topside." He turned to Zara, who watched them with intelligent, assessing eyes. "I know this is a lot to take in, but we need your help. This facility, your people's legacy, it's all in danger." Zara nodded, her movements fluid and graceful despite millennia of stasis. "I will assist you. The network must be protected." As Greg raced to organize their defenses, he could hear the distant rumble of weapons fire. The extremists had launched their assault, determined to seize both the terraforming technology and its newly awakened creator. Outside, the sky above Novatera churned with activity. Extremist ships engaged in dogfights with the expedition's defenders, while drop ships descended toward the facility. Greg's enhanced vision picked out details of the battle that others would miss, allowing him to direct their limited forces to maximum effect. Back in the facility, Quinn and Dr. Lyra worked feverishly to unlock the ancient defenses. Zara moved among them, her innate understanding of the systems proving invaluable. Suddenly, the ground shook as a massive form rose from beneath the planet's surface, a colossal defense turret, its barrel tracking the incoming hostiles. As the battle raged above and around them, Greg found himself face to face with the leader of the extremist group. The man sneered, brandishing a high-tech energy weapon. "Stand aside, traitor," he spat. "That alien and her technology belong to humanity." Greg's enhanced reflexes allowed him to dodge the first blast, closing the distance between them in a heartbeat. The two engaged in a brutal hand-to-hand struggle, Greg's augmented strength meeting the extremist leader's combat experience and cybernetic enhancements. Inside the facility, Quinn watched the external feeds with growing concern. She saw Greg locked in combat, his movements a blur of superhuman speed and precision. Her heart raced, a mix of fear for his safety and awe at his capabilities. As Greg and the extremist leader traded blows, Zara's voice rang out over the facility's communication system. "I have full control of the terraforming network," she announced, preparing to engage planetary defenses. The ground beneath their feet began to shift and buckle. Massive rock formations erupted from the earth, forming an impenetrable barrier around the facility and trapping the remaining extremist forces. The sudden geological activity threw Greg's opponent off balance, giving him the opening he needed to end the fight decisively. With the immediate threat neutralized, Greg returned to the control room, battered but victorious. He found Quinn, Dr. Lyra, and Zara gathered around a holographic display of Novatera, its surface now dramatically altered. "The extremists have been contained," Zara reported, her alien features set in an expression of grim satisfaction. "But our actions have accelerated the terraforming process. Novatera is changing faster than we anticipated." As the team absorbed this news, a priority communication came through from Admiral Zyrax. His holographic form shimmered into view, tentacles waving with agitation. "The Federation Council is convening an emergency session," he announced. "They want you, all of you, including our new guest, to return immediately." Greg looked around at his companions, each face reflecting the weight of their recent experiences and the decisions that lay ahead. The partially terraformed Novatera loomed behind them, a testament to the power they now wielded and the responsibility it entailed. As they prepared to depart, Greg pulled Quinn aside. Their eyes met, a wealth of unspoken emotions passing between them. Quinn reached out, her hand gently touching Greg's arm. "Whatever comes next," she said softly, "we face it together." Greg nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. But as they turned to board their ship, he couldn't help but notice Dr. Lyra and Zara deep in conversation, their heads bent close together over a datapad. The future, he realized, was far from certain, and the challenges ahead would test them all in ways they had yet to imagine. As their ship entered Federation space, the comm system crackled to life with an urgent message from Admiral Zyrax. "Captain, we have a situation." Zyrax's holographic form flickered into view, his tentacles writhing with agitation. "News of your discoveries on Novatera has leaked. The Federation is in turmoil." Greg exchanged worried glances with Quinn and Dr. Lyra. Zara, still adapting to this new era, tilted her head in curiosity. "How bad is it, Admiral?" Greg asked, his enhanced senses picking up on the subtle stress markers in Zyrax's posture. "Political factions are at each other's throats. Everyone wants control of the terraforming technology and access to our guest," Zyrax replied, his gaze shifting to Zara. As their ship docked at the Federation's Central Space Station, Greg felt a familiar tension coiling in his muscles. The corridors were eerily empty as they were escorted to a high-security conference room. The door slid open, revealing a cacophony of alien voices. Representatives from across the Federation filled the room, their varied anatomies creating a dizzying array of colors and shapes. All conversation ceased as Greg and his team entered. "Ah, our guest of honor," a Vorkan ambassador hissed, his scaled skin shimmering under the harsh lights. "Perhaps now we can get some answers." Greg stepped forward, his enhanced strength evident in his controlled movements. "We're here to share our findings and work together for the benefit of all species in the Federation," he began. But as Greg started to explain their discoveries on Novatera, the room erupted into chaos. A Krex representative slammed his chitinous appendages on the table. "We demand immediate access to this technology. Our worlds are dying. And risk ecological catastrophe?" A Luminar scientist countered, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with agitation. "We must study the long-term effects before." A deafening screech cut through the air as a JK diplomat rose to his full height. The political ramifications alone could destabilize entire sectors. We cannot allow. Quinn's hand on Greg's arm drew his attention. Her eyes darted meaningfully to a group of representatives in the corner. Greg focused his enhanced senses, picking up on subtle hand signals and subvocal communications. "Something's wrong," Quinn whispered, her antennae twitching nervously. Before Greg could respond, his heightened hearing picked up the sound of approaching footsteps, too many, too fast. "Everyone down!" he shouted, just as the doors burst open. A team of mercenaries poured into the room, their weapons trained on the assembled diplomats. Greg's mind raced, analyzing their gear and formation. These weren't common thugs. They were well-trained and well-equipped. Without hesitation, Greg launched into action. His augmented speed allowed him to close the distance to the nearest attacker before the mercenary could squeeze off a shot. Greg's fist connected with the attacker's jaw, the impact reverberating through his enhanced musculature. Across the room, Quinn and Dr. Lyra moved in tandem to protect Zara. Quinn overturned a heavy conference table, providing cover, while Dr. Lyra's slender fingers flew over her data pad, interfacing with the station's systems. "Zara, we need your help," Dr. Lyra called out. "Can you access the station security protocols?" The alien's eyes glowed with an inner light as she placed her hand on a nearby console. I can sense the systems. They're not unlike our own," Zara said, her voice tinged with wonder and concentration. As Greg grappled with two mercenaries, using his superior strength to slam them together, he saw Quinn improvising a weapon from broken chair legs. She wielded them with surprising skill, keeping a group of attackers at bay. Dr. Lyra's voice cut through the chaos. "Greg, the ventilation system." Understanding her plan, Greg leaped towards the ceiling, his enhanced agility allowing him to reach the vent cover. With a powerful punch, he shattered the grate, releasing a cloud of shimmering particles. "Nanobot swarm," Dr. Lyra explained as the tiny machine swarmed over the mercenaries, disrupting their weapons and communication devices. Just as the tide began to turn, the conference room doors slid open once more. Admiral Zyrax burst in, leading a team of Federation security officers. "Secure the room," he barked, his tentacles lashing out to subdue a fleeing attacker. In the ensuing confusion, Greg spotted the mercenary leader slipping away. He moved to pursue but was stopped by Quinn's urgent call. "Greg, wait. Look at this," she said, holding up a data chip she retrieved from one of the subdued attackers. As the Federation security team rounded up the remaining mercenaries, Greg, Quinn, Dr. Lyra, and Zara huddled around the chip's projected display. "These are shipping manifests," Dr. Lyra murmured, her large eyes widening. "And financial transactions, all linked to Stellaris Corp., one of the largest multiplanetary corporations in the Federation," Quinn added, her voice grim, "with ties to dozens of worlds." Greg's enhanced vision caught minute details in the data stream, connections forming in his mind. "This goes deeper than we thought," he said, his voice low. "We've stumbled onto something big." Admiral Zyrax approached, his expression a mix of relief and concern. "The Federation Council is convening an emergency session. They want all of you there, including our new friend," he said, nodding toward Zara. As they prepared to face the council, Greg couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The attack, the corporate connections, the political upheaval, all of it pointed to a conspiracy that spanned the stars. And at the center of it all was the terraforming technology and the secrets it held. With a shared look of perseverance, Greg and his team stepped forward, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead in the vast, intrigue-filled expanse of the Federation. Federation space, Greg realized, was far from certain, and the challenges ahead would test them all in ways they had yet to imagine. As their ship entered the docking bay of the Federation's Central Space Station, Greg's enhanced senses picked up an unusual level of activity. Security personnel moved with heightened urgency, their weapons at the ready. "Something's not right," he murmured to Quinn, who nodded in agreement. No sooner had they disembarked than Admiral Zyrax approached, his tentacles writhing with barely suppressed agitation. "We need to talk," he said in a low voice. "Not here. Follow me." The Admiral led them through a series of winding corridors, bypassing the main thoroughfares. Greg noticed the subtle security measures they passed, hidden cameras, energy field generators, and more. Finally, they arrived at a nondescript door that slid open at Zyrax's touch. Inside, a small group of trusted Federation officials waited. The tension in the room was palpable. "We have a situation," Zyrax began without preamble. "The attack during the conference was just the beginning. We've uncovered evidence of a far-reaching conspiracy involving Stellaris Corporation." Greg exchanged glances with Quinn and Dr. Lyra. Zara, still adapting to this new era, listened intently. Zyrax continued, "We've traced suspicious activity to a remote mining colony on the asteroid Series 9. We need you to investigate. Off the books." "Why us?" Quinn asked, her antennae twitching with curiosity. "Your unique abilities and recent experiences make you ideal for this mission," Zyrax replied. "Plus, after the attack, we don't know who we can trust." Greg nodded, his mind already racing through potential scenarios. "When do we leave?" "Immediately," Zyrax said, gesturing to a nearby console. "We've prepared a stealth ship for your use. All the details you need are here." As they reviewed the mission parameters, Greg felt a familiar surge of adrenaline. This was what he was made for: covert operations, high stakes, the unknown. Within hours, they were aboard the stealth ship, slipping away from the station under the cover of a routine cargo departure. As the stars streaked by, Greg briefed the team on their approach. "We'll pose as traders," he explained, pulling up a holographic display of Series 9. "Quinn and I will take point on the ground. Dr. Lyra, you and Zara will coordinate from the ship, monitoring communications and providing scientific analysis as needed." As they neared Series 9, the asteroid's pockmarked surface came into view. Mining operations scarred its face, with sprawling industrial complexes nestled in the larger craters. Greg and Quinn donned their disguises, nondescript work clothes favored by the various alien species that made up the mining colony's workforce. With a few adjustments to their appearance and some clever use of holographic technology, they were ready to blend in. The docking process went smoothly, their cover as traders holding up under the cursory inspection. As they stepped onto the colony's main concourse, Greg's enhanced senses went into overdrive, cataloging every detail. The air was thick with the scents of various alien species, mingled with industrial lubricants and raw ore. Workers of all shapes and sizes moved about their business, some heading to their shifts, others returning from the mines. "Let's split up," Greg suggested quietly. "We'll cover more ground that way. Keep your comm link open." Quinn nodded, her antennae quivering slightly, a sign of excitement Greg had come to recognize. As she moved off into the crowd, Greg turned his attention to a nearby group of miners. He approached casually, adopting the weary gait of a long-haul trader. "Heard there might be some good business opportunities here," he said, his voice pitched to carry just far enough. "Any tips for a newcomer?" As the miners began to chat, Greg's attention was drawn to a figure moving through the crowd. She was unmistakably alien. Her skin covered in iridescent scales that shifted color with her movements, her eyes large and mesmerizing. But it wasn't just her appearance that caught his eye. It was the way she moved, with a purposeful grace that spoke of training and vigilance. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and Greg felt a jolt of recognition. Not of her specifically, but of a kindred spirit, someone else who didn't quite belong. He excused himself from the miners and began to follow her at a discreet distance. As he did, his comm link crackled to life. "Greg," Quinn's voice came through, pitched low. "I've found something. You need to see this." "On my way," he replied, his gaze still fixed on the mysterious alien woman as she disappeared around a corner. "And Quinn, I think we might not be the only ones investigating this place." As Greg moved to rendezvous with Quinn, he couldn't shake the feeling that their mission had just become far more complicated and potentially far more dangerous. Dangerous than they had initially believed. Greg's comm unit buzzed urgently. "Greg, we've got a problem." Dr. Lyra's voice came through, tense and hurried. "Multiple ships approaching. They're not Federation." Before Greg could respond, a blinding light engulfed their vessel. The ship shuddered, systems flickering as an unseen force took hold. Greg's enhanced senses went into overdrive, every nerve on high alert. "We're caught in some kind of tractor beam," Quinn reported, her fingers flying over the controls. "I can't break free." Through the view screen, a massive vessel materialized, dwarfing their ship. Its design was unlike anything Greg had ever seen, sleek, asymmetrical, with pulsing energy conduits crisscrossing its hull. "By the stars," Zara gasped, her eyes wide. "It's a Zarthani ship." The team exchanged bewildered glances. They had no time to process this revelation, as their ship was pulled inexorably towards the alien vessel's docking bay. As they touched down, Greg's mind raced through possible scenarios. "Everyone stay calm," he instructed. "We don't know their intentions. Be ready for anything." The airlock hissed open, revealing a contingent of Zarthani soldiers. Their bodies were covered in iridescent scales, eyes large and unblinking. They moved with fluid grace, weapons at the ready. "You will come with us," one of them stated, its voice a melodic hum. Greg nodded, signaling his team to comply. As they were escorted through the ship's corridors, he took in every detail. The technology surrounding them was far beyond Federation capabilities. They were led to a vast chamber, its walls adorned with holographic displays showing star systems and data streams. At its center stood a group of Zarthani, their attire and bearing marking them as leaders. One stepped forward, its scales shifting from blue to gold. "I am High Counselor Vexera. We have been monitoring your activities with great interest." Greg felt a surge of adrenaline. This encounter could change everything. "We come in peace," he began, but Vexera cut him off with a gesture. "We know why you're here," the High Counselor said. "The terraforming technology you've discovered poses a grave threat to galactic stability. We cannot allow it to fall into the wrong hands." Quinn stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding caution. "You've been observing us? For how long?" Vexera's gaze shifted to her. "Longer than your Federation has existed. We've watched, we've learned, and now we must act. You will surrender all information and technology related to the terraforming device." Greg's enhanced muscles tensed, ready for action. "I'm afraid we can't do that," he said firmly. "This technology could save countless lives if used properly." The chamber grew silent, tension crackling in the air. Vexera's eyes narrowed. "You misunderstand. This is not a request." Suddenly, Zara moved to Greg's side. "High Counselor, please," she pleaded. "These humans are not our enemies. They seek to use this technology responsibly." Vexera's attention snapped to Zara. "You side with them over your own kind?" As the standoff intensified, Greg felt a strange sensation wash over him. The Zarthani's words, initially processed through his translator, began to take on new meaning. He could understand them directly, nuances and all. "We don't have to be adversaries," Greg said, surprising himself by speaking in perfect Zarthani. The aliens recoiled in shock. Seizing the moment, Quinn stepped in. "We propose a compromise. We'll share limited information about the terraforming technology in exchange for your help in exposing corruption within the Federation. Before Vexera could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. A Zarthani officer rushed in. High Counselor, Federation ships approaching. They've opened fire. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Greg locked eyes with Quinn and Zara, a silent understanding passing between them. This was their chance. As Zarthani soldiers rushed to battle stations, Greg led his team through the confusion. His newfound language ability proved crucial as he navigated the alien ship's layout, barking orders in Zarthani to clear their path. They reached a bank of escape pods, but not before Quinn was struck by falling debris. Greg scooped her up, his enhanced strength allowing him to carry her effortlessly. Zara, can you pilot one of these? Greg asked as they clambered into a pod. The alien nodded, her hands dancing over the controls. With a lurch, they launched into space, the battle between Federation and Zarthani ships raging around them. As they drifted, Greg tended to Quinn's injuries. Their eyes met, years of shared experiences and unspoken feelings passing between them. Yet Greg couldn't ignore the way Zara watched them, her alien features unable to fully hide her own complex emotions. A Federation ship loomed into view, its tractor beam locking onto their pod. As they were pulled to safety, Greg knew their ordeal was not nearly finished. The Zarthani's existence was now known to the Federation, and the team possessed information that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. As Admiral Zyrax's familiar face appeared on the pod's comm screen, Greg steeled himself for the challenges ahead. The true test of his abilities and his loyalties was just beginning. As Admiral Zyrax's familiar face appeared on the pod's comm screen, Greg steeled himself for the challenges ahead. The true test of his abilities and his loyalties was just starting. "We're bringing you in," Zyrax said, his tentacles writhing with agitation. "Prepare for immediate debriefing upon arrival." The journey to the Federation capital was tense and silent. Quinn's injuries had been stabilized, but she remained unconscious. Zara sat quietly, her alien features unreadable. Greg's mind raced, trying to process the implications of their encounter with the Zarthani. As soon as their ship docked, a team of Federation security officers escorted them to a high-security briefing room. The sterile white walls and bright lights contrasted sharply with the chaos of their recent experiences. Admiral Zyrax and a group of Federation officials were already waiting. Their faces were grim, the weight of recent events evident in their postures. "Report," Zyrax commanded without preamble. Greg took a deep breath and began recounting their mission, starting with the discovery on Ceres 9 and ending with their escape from the Zarthani ship. As he spoke, he noticed the officials' expressions shifting from disbelief to shock to grave concern. Quinn, who had regained consciousness during their arrival, added her insights on the stolen Zarthani data. "Their technology is far beyond ours," she explained, her voice still weak. "The terraforming device we found, it's practically primitive compared to what they possess." Zara stepped forward, her scales shimmering under the harsh lights. "My people have been observing yours for centuries," she admitted. "We believed it was our duty to guide the galaxy's development." The room erupted into chaos. Officials shouted questions and accusations, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of confusion and fear. "Silence!" Zyrax's voice cut through the noise. He turned to Greg. "You said you could understand their language." "How?" Greg shook his head. "I don't know. It just happened. One moment I was hearing translated words. The next I understood everything." A tall, slender alien with 4 arms raised one of its appendages. "We must study this phenomenon immediately. If we can replicate a dash." "Agreed," Zyrax interrupted. "Greg, you'll undergo testing as soon as we're done here." Greg nodded, pushing down his reluctance. If it could help them understand what was happening, he'd endure whatever test they threw at him. The briefing continued for hours. Every detail was scrutinized, every decision questioned. By the time they finished, Greg felt mentally and physically exhausted. As they left the room, an official approached them. "The Federation Council has called an emergency session," she informed them. "You'll be expected to testify." Greg exchanged glances with Quinn and Zara. They all knew the gravity of what was to come. The next few days passed in a blur of tests and preparations. Greg found himself in lab after lab, his abilities pushed to their limits. He lifted weights that would crush normal humans, solved complex equations in seconds, and demonstrated his newfound linguistic skills by conversing fluently in dozens of alien languages. During a rare moment of respite, Greg sought out Quinn. He found her in a research lab, poring over data from the Zarthani ship. "How are you holding up?" he asked, noting the dark circles under her eyes. Quinn looked up, her antennae twitching with fatigue. "I'm fine. But Greg, this data. It's incredible. The Zarthani haven't just been watching us. They've been manipulating events within the Federation for years." Greg leaned in, his enhanced vision easily reading the complex diagrams on her screen. "How deep does it go?" "All the way to the top," Quinn whispered. "I think they might even be behind the terraforming conspiracy." Before Greg could respond, he sensed a presence behind him. He turned to see Zara standing in the doorway, her scales shifting from blue to a deep purple. "Greg," she said softly, "may I speak with you privately?" Excusing himself, Greg followed Zara to a quiet corner of the research facility. She seemed nervous, her eyes darting around as if checking for eavesdroppers. "There's something you need to understand about my people," Zara began. "We believe it's our destiny to guide the galaxy towards a new era of prosperity. Everything we've done has been in pursuit of that goal." Greg listened intently, noting the passion in her voice. As she spoke, he found himself drawn to her alien beauty, the way her scales shimmered with each movement. For a moment, the air between them seemed to crackle with tension. Zara stepped closer, her large eyes meeting his. Greg felt his heart rate increase, his enhanced senses hyper-aware of her proximity. Just as the moment threatened to overwhelm them, an alarm blared through the facility. "All personnel report to their stations," a voice announced over the intercom. "Council session commencing in 1 hour." The spell broken, Greg and Zara stepped apart. There would be time to explore these feelings later. For now, they had a galaxy to save. As they made their way to the council chambers, Greg couldn't help but feel that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The future of human-alien relations, perhaps the future of the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. Outside the chambers, a sea of protesters from various species had gathered. Their chants and signs demanded answers about the terraforming technology and the Zarthani threat. Security personnel struggled to maintain order as the crowd's energy threatened to boil over. Inside, the council members took their seats, their faces a mix of anticipation and dread. Greg, Quinn, and Zara stood before them, ready to present their evidence and face whatever consequences might come. As the session began, Greg's enhanced senses tingled. Something wasn't right. His eyes scanned the room, taking in every detail. That's when he noticed it, a tiny distortion in the air near one of the council members' seats. Using his newfound agility, Greg leapt across the chamber, his hand closing around an invisible object. As he pulled it free, a cloaking field flickered and died, revealing a sophisticated surveillance device. The council erupted into chaos once again. Accusations flew as alliances shifted in real time. Greg held the device aloft, his mind racing to understand its implications. Before order could be restored, the chamber doors burst open. A group of aliens unlike any Greg had seen before strode in, their presence commanding immediate attention. We are the representatives of the Zarthani High Council, one of them announced, its voice resonating with authority. And we demand to be heard. Greg, Quinn, and Zara exchanged glances. They knew that whatever happened next would change the course of galactic history forever. The Zarthani representatives strode into the chamber, their presence immediately commanding attention. Greg's enhanced senses kicked into overdrive, analyzing every detail of these new arrivals. We are the representatives of the Zarthani High Council, announced their leader, a tall, imposing figure with shimmering scales and piercing eyes. And we demand to be heard. The council members fell silent, their earlier chaos replaced by a tense anticipation. Admiral Zyrax's tentacles twitched nervously as he addressed the newcomers. Ambassador Keelzar, I presume? You may speak. Keelzar stepped forward, his voice resonating with authority. For centuries, we have observed your civilizations. We possess technologies beyond your comprehension. It is time for us to guide your development more directly. The ambassador's words sent murmurs rippling through the chamber. Greg noticed Quinn's antennae quivering with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Zara, now known by her full name Zalera, stood rigid, her scales shifting colors rapidly. Keelzar continued, We propose a joint initiative to implement the terraforming technology on a massive scale. This will solve resource scarcities across multiple worlds, ushering in an era of unprecedented prosperity. As the Zarthani spoke, Greg's heightened senses detected something odd. Subtle biosignatures emanated from the alien delegation, barely perceptible even to his enhanced faculties. He leaned close to Quinn, whispering, They're releasing pheromones. I think they're trying to influence the council. Quinn's eyes widened. She discreetly tapped a few commands into her wrist computer. Moments later, a nearly imperceptible hum filled the room as hidden air filtration systems activated. The effect was almost immediate. Council members who had been nodding along enthusiastically now furrowed their brows, questioning glances passing between them. Ambassador Keelzar faltered mid-sentence, his composure slipping for a fraction of a second. Greg moved swiftly, positioning himself near key council members. He caught Admiral Zyrax's eye, giving a subtle nod. The Admiral understood, his posture stiffening as he prepared to address the chamber. Before he could speak, Keelzar's voice took on a sharper edge. We require immediate access to the experimental terraforming device recovered from Series 9. Any delay would be unfortunate. Our fleet stands ready to ensure cooperation. The thinly veiled threat sent shockwaves through the chamber. Security forces moved to contain the Zarthani delegation, energy weapons humming to life. In the midst of the chaos, Zalera stepped forward. Her voice cut through the din, steady and clear. I cannot stand by and watch this deception continue. My people's methods are wrong. I offer my knowledge to the Federation to help understand and counter Zarthani tactics. Her words hit like a thunderbolt. Keelzar's face contorted with rage. But before he could respond, alarms blared throughout the capital. A Federation officer burst into the chamber, his face pale. Multiple Zarthani warships decloaking near key installations across the galaxy. The revelation of the Zarthani's true military presence sent the Council into a frenzy. Amid the shouting and confusion, Admiral Zyrax's voice boomed out. We need a compromise to prevent all-out war. I propose a joint task force to study and implement the terraforming technology under strict oversight. As debates erupted over this proposal, Greg's mind raced. The experimental device on Ceres 9 was now the most valuable and dangerous artifact in the galaxy. He stepped forward, addressing the council. I volunteer to lead a team to secure the terraforming device. We can't risk it falling into the wrong hands. Quinn moved to his side, wincing slightly from her injuries but standing tall. I'm going too. My knowledge of the technology is crucial. Zellera joined them, her scales now a determined blue. My insider knowledge of Zarthani tactics could mean the difference between success and failure. Admiral Zyrax nodded gravely. Approved. Assemble your team immediately. We've just received intelligence that a rogue Zarthani faction plans to seize a device by force. As Greg, Quinn, and Zellera hurried from the chamber, reports flooded in of skirmishes breaking out between Federation and Zarthani forces across multiple star systems. The gravity of their mission greatly troubled on them. They boarded a sleek stealth ship, its matte black hull designed to evade detection. As the engines hummed to life, Greg looked at his companions. Quinn's fingers danced over the ship's controls, her scientific mind already calculating their best approach. Zellera stood at the viewport, her alien features set in iron will. Course set for Series 9, Quinn announced, her voice steady despite the tension. Greg took his place at the tactical station. Let's move. Every second counts. As their ship streaked away from the capital, leaving behind a galaxy on the brink of war, Greg knew that their success or failure would shape the future of interstellar relations for generations to come. The race to secure the terraforming device had begun, and the fate of countless worlds hung in the balance. Balance. The race to secure the terraforming device had begun, and the fate of countless worlds hung in the balance. As their ship streaked through space, an urgent transmission from Admiral Zyrax cut through the tense silence. Greg's enhanced hearing picked up the message before Quinn could even route it through the main communication system. Change your plans, Zyrax's gravelly voice crackled. The device has been moved to Europa for safekeeping. You must avert course immediately. Quinn's fingers flew across the navigation console, recalibrating their trajectory. Course adjusted. ETA to Europa. 6 hours, 12 minutes. Greg's mind raced, analyzing the implications of this new development. The Sol system will be heavily guarded. How do we get past the defenses? As if in answer to his question, the ship's sensors lit up as they entered the outer reaches of the solar system. Multiple Zarthani vessels were engaged in a fierce battle with Federation defense platforms near Mars. There's our opening, Greg said, his tactical mind already formulating a plan. We'll use the chaos as cover. Zellera, can you modify our stealth systems to mimic Zarthani energy signatures? The Zarthani defector nodded, her scales shifting to a determined blue. I can make us look like debris from a destroyed ship. It won't fool them for long, but it should get us past the battle zone. As they approached Europa, Quinn's face fell. We have a problem. The research base is protected by an energy shield. We can't teleport or land directly. Zellera's eyes lit up. I might have a solution. With your help, Quinn, we can modify our sensors to detect microscopic flaws in the shield. The two worked feverishly, their fingers dancing across control panels as they integrated Zarthani technology with Federation systems. Greg watched in admiration, marveling at how seamlessly his team had come together despite their different backgrounds. There, Quinn exclaimed, pointing to a small blip on the sensor display. A weakness in the shield, near one of Europa's deep crevasses. Greg took manual control of the ship, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to navigate the treacherous ice formations with precision. They slipped through the narrow opening in the shield, descending into the icy depths of Europa. As they approached a hidden underwater docking bay, Quinn distributed specialized environmental suits. These will protect us from Europa's extreme conditions, she explained, helping Dr. Lyra into her suit. The team exited their ship, the airlock hissing as it equalized pressure. Greg's enhanced vision pierced the dim lighting of the facility, guiding them through deserted corridors. Most of the security forces had been deployed elsewhere, leaving their path relatively clear. They encountered several sealed bulkheads, but Greg's augmented strength made short work of them. As they progressed deeper into the facility, Quinn's handheld scanner began to beep insistently. I'm picking up the device's energy signature, she whispered. But something's not right. The readings are erratic. They burst into the central laboratory, only to find Dr. Lyra hunched over the experimental terraforming device. She looked up, startled by their sudden appearance. "What are you doing?" Greg demanded, taking in the scene with his heightened senses. Dr. Lyra's antennae drooped. "I received orders from the Council. They want the device ready for potential use against the Zarthani fleet." Before Greg could respond, a violent tremor shook the facility. Quinn's scanner shrieked in alarm. "The device is affecting Europa's core. We need to shut it down now." As they rushed to stabilize the situation, alarms blared throughout the base. A voice over the intercom announced a security breach. Zarthani forces had penetrated the shield. Greg made a split-second decision. "We need to evacuate with the device. We can't let it fall into Zarthani hands." Quinn and Dr. Lyra worked to prepare the device for transport, while Greg and Zellera took up defensive positions. The first wave of Zarthani soldiers burst through the lab doors, energy weapons blazing. Greg moved within human speed, closing the distance before the soldiers could react. His enhanced strength allowed him to disarm and incapacitate multiple attackers in seconds. Beside him, Zellera's combat skills were equally impressive, her movements fluid and lethal. With the device secured, they fought their way back towards the docking bay. Europa's increasing instability made their escape treacherous, as new crevasses formed and ice sheets shifted unpredictably. Greg's senses were on overdrive, guiding the team through collapsing corridors and around dangerous sinkholes. As they approached their ship, a squad of elite Zarthani warriors blocked their path. Zellera stepped forward, her voice ringing out in the Zarthani language. Greg's translator struggled to keep up, but he understood the gist. She was challenging their leader to single combat. The Zarthani squad hesitated, clearly caught off guard by the invocation of an ancient tradition. Their leader, a towering figure with iridescent scales, stepped forward to accept the challenge. Greg watched in awe as Zellera engaged in a deadly dance with her opponent. Her movements were a blur, each strike and parry executed with precision. Sensing an opportunity, Greg joined the fray, turning the duel into a 2-on-1 battle that showcased the perfect synergy between human enhancement and Zarthani combat techniques. Together, they overwhelmed the Zarthani leader. The remaining soldiers, bound by their code of honor, stood down. Greg and Zellera locked eyes for a moment, a current of mutual admiration and attraction passing between them. The moment was broken by another violent tremor. "We need to go now," Quinn shouted from the ship's entrance. They sprinted aboard, Greg taking the helm. His enhanced reflexes were pushed to their limits as he navigated through Europa's collapsing ice shell. Behind them, the research facility crumbled, sinking into the moon's subsurface ocean. As they broke free from Europa's gravity, Greg set a course for Earth. The experimental terraforming device hummed ominously in the cargo hold, its power nearly unleashed. Quinn tended to Dr. Lyra's injuries, while Zellera monitored the long-range scanners for any sign of pursuit. Greg's mind raced with the challenges that lay ahead. They had secured the device, but at what cost? And how could they ensure it wouldn't be misused by either side in this escalating conflict? As he pondered these questions, he couldn't help but steal glances at Zellera, their shared battle experience having forged a connection that added yet another layer of complexity to their already volatile situation. The ship streaked towards Earth, carrying its precious and dangerous cargo. Greg knew that their arrival would mark not an end, but the beginning of an even greater challenge. The true test of their abilities and their newfound alliance was yet to come. The ship streaked towards Earth, carrying its precious and dangerous cargo. Greg knew that their arrival would mark not an end, but the beginning of an even greater challenge. The true test of their abilities and their newfound alliance was yet to come. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Quinn's voice cut through the chaos. The device is emitting dangerous levels of radiation. Greg's enhanced senses immediately picked up the change in the air, a sharp, ozone-like scent that made his skin prickle. He watched as Quinn and Dr. Lyra scrambled to the cargo hold, their faces etched with concern. "We need to contain it," Dr. Lyra shouted, her antenna quivering with stress. Quinn nodded, her mind already racing. The cargo hold. There might be materials we can use for shielding. Greg turned to Zalera, who was monitoring the long-range scanners. "Take the helm. I'll help them with the device." As Greg joined Quinn and Dr. Lyra in the cargo hold, he could feel the ship's systems faltering. The lights flickered, and the familiar hum of the engines became erratic. "The radiation is affecting our systems," Quinn reported, her fingers flying over a portable console. "Navigation and communications are going haywire." Greg's mind raced as he helped stack crates of dense materials around the terraforming device. The impromptu shielding seemed to help, but he knew it was only a temporary solution. "We can't make it to Earth like this," he decided, his augmented brain quickly calculating their options. "We need to set down somewhere with the resources to handle this. Mars is our best bet." As Greg returned to the cockpit, he found Zalera wrestling with the controls. The ship lurched and shuddered, fighting against the cascading system failures caused by the radiation. "I've never flown anything like this," Zalera admitted, her scales flickering with a mix of concentration and concern. Greg placed his hand over hers on the control stick, guiding her movements. "Together, then," he said, their eyes meeting for a brief, charged moment. As they entered Mars' atmosphere, the ship's hull integrity alarm screamed to life. Greg's enhanced reflexes took over, his hands moving in a blur across the controls. The ship bucked and rolled, fighting against the planet's thin atmosphere and the damage to its systems. "Brace for impact," Greg shouted as the red Martian landscape rushed up to meet them. The ship slammed into the dusty surface, skidding and bouncing before finally coming to rest. As the dust settled, Greg ran a quick systems check. Propulsion's shot, but life support is holding. "We made it." They exited the ship, the Martian wind whipping red dust around them. In the distance, the gleaming domes of Mars Colony Alpha rose from the barren landscape. Before they could gather their bearings, a security detail approached, led by a stern-faced man in a crisp uniform. "Colonel Marcus Reeves, Mars Colony Alpha Security," he introduced himself, eyeing the group warily. "We detected your crash landing. Care to explain what's brought you to our doorstep?" Greg stepped forward, quickly outlining their situation. Colonel Reeves's expression grew grave as he listened. "A highly unstable terraforming device? That's not something we can leave out here," Reeves said. "Follow me. We have a secure lab where you can work on neutralizing it." As they entered the colony, Greg marveled at the feat of engineering. Despite the harsh Martian environment, the interior was a bustling hive of activity. Scientists and colonists moved purposefully through the corridors, barely sparing a glance for the newcomers. In the lab, Quinn and Dr. Lyra immediately set to work with a team of Martian scientists, their conversation a rapid-fire exchange of technical jargon. Greg and Zalera found themselves assigned to the heavy lifting, using their enhanced strength to move equipment and materials as needed. As they worked side by side, Greg couldn't help but notice the graceful efficiency of Zalera's movements. Her scales shimmered under the lab's bright lights, and more than once, their hands brushed as they passed tools back and forth. Each accidental touch sent a jolt of electricity through Greg's body, a sensation his enhanced nervous system seemed to amplify. Their progress was interrupted by Colonel Reeves bursting into the lab, his face grim. "We've got incoming. Long-range sensors have picked up a Zarthani fleet heading straight for Mars." The news sent a ripple of tension through the room. Quinn looked up from her work, her face pale. "We need more time. The containment unit isn't ready yet." As if in response to her words, the experimental device began to pulse with an ominous glow. Energy arced from its surface, overloading nearby equipment. The lab's lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness broken only by the device's eerie illumination. The colony's power grid is failing, one of the Martian scientists shouted. In the dim emergency lighting that followed, Greg met Zalera's eyes. A silent understanding passed between them. "We'll go reboot the defense grid," Greg volunteered. "It needs to be done manually from the surface control station." Colonel Reeves nodded grimly. "It's dangerous out there, but we don't have a choice. Good luck." As Greg and Zalera donned environmental suits, preparing to step out onto the harsh Martian surface, the first tremors of the approaching battle began to shake the colony. The experimental device continued to pulse ominously in the lab behind them, a ticking time bomb that could determine the fate of Mars, and perhaps the entire Sol system. Greg sealed his helmet, turning to Zalera. "Ready." She nodded, her alien features set with dedication. As the airlock cycled open, revealing the red wasteland beyond, Greg knew that their real test was just beginning. Greg's heart raced as he and Zalera stepped onto the harsh Martian landscape, the red dust swirling around their environmental suits. They moved swiftly towards the surface control station, their enhanced abilities allowing them to navigate the treacherous terrain with ease. Suddenly, the sky lit up with brilliant flashes of light. Greg's augmented vision zoomed in on the source, a Zarthani fleet entering Mars' atmosphere. "They're here," Zalera said, her voice tense through the comm link. They quickened their pace, reaching the control station just as the first Zarthani dropships touched down. Greg's fingers flew over the controls, rebooting the defense grid. The colony's remaining turrets whirred to life, spitting energy bolts at the incoming invaders. "We need to get back," Greg said, sealing the station. "They'll need us inside." As they sprinted back to the airlock, the ground shook with the impact of Zarthani weapons fire. The colony's outer dome cracked under the assault, emergency force fields flickering to life to maintain pressure. Inside, chaos reigned. Colonel Reeves barked orders as colonists and security personnel scrambled to defensive positions. Greg and Zalera shed their environmental suits and rushed to the lab, where Quinn and Dr. Lyra were still working feverishly on the terraforming device. "We need more time," Quinn shouted over the din of alarms and distant explosions. "But I have an idea. If we integrate the device with the ion cannon, we might be able to use its power as a weapon against the Zarthani fleet." Greg nodded, his enhanced mind quickly grasping the implications. "What do you need?" "Help us move this to the weapons platform," Dr. Lyra said, gesturing to the pulsing device. As Greg and Zalera carefully transported the unstable machine, Quinn and Dr. Lyra coordinated with the colony's engineers to prepare the ion cannon for the integration. The process was delicate, requiring precise calibrations to prevent a catastrophic overload. Outside, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The first wave of Zarthani ground troops breached the colony's outer defenses. Colonel Reeves led a counteroffensive, but the superior technology of the invaders pushed the human forces back. Greg and Zalera exchanged a look, both knowing they were needed on the front lines. They joined the battle, their enhanced abilities turning the tide. Greg's superhuman strength allowed him to overpower multiple Zarthani soldiers at once, while Zalera's agility and combat training proved invaluable in the close-quarters fighting. As they fought, Greg caught glimpses of the ongoing work on the ion cannon. Quinn and Dr. Lyra worked tirelessly, making rapid adjustments as the device's energy output fluctuated. The integration was proving more complex than anticipated, and time was running out. A stray energy blast from a Zarthani weapon struck the lab's power distribution node, causing a surge that threatened to destabilize the entire system. Quinn's quick thinking saved the day as she rerouted power through secondary circuits, averting disaster but delaying the cannon's activation. The Zarthani, sensing victory, pressed their advantage. They deployed a massive siege engine, a towering walker armed with devastating energy weapons. The walker began systematically destroying the colony's remaining defensive emplacements, leaving the human forces exposed. Greg knew they needed a bold move. He gathered a small team of the colony's best fighters, including Zalera. "We're going to take that walker," he announced, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. They moved swiftly, using the rubble and smoke for cover. When they reached the walker, Greg's enhanced strength allowed him to pry open an access panel, creating an entry point for the team. Inside the walker, they engaged in fierce hand-to-hand combat with the Zarthani crew. Greg's augmented reflexes and Zalera's combat skills proved decisive as they fought their way to the control center. Meanwhile, Zalera's knowledge of Zarthani technology proved invaluable. She provided critical intelligence on the walker's weak points to the colony's remaining artillery units, allowing them to concentrate their fire effectively and slow the machine's advance. Back in the lab, Quinn and Dr. Lyra completed the final calibrations on the ion cannon. The weapon hummed to life, its capacitors crackling with the immense energy of the terraforming device. As the cannon reached full charge, Greg and his team secured control of the Zarthani walker. Using the enemy's own weapons against them, Greg turned the walker's fire on the incoming Zarthani reinforcements, creating a temporary reprieve for the beleaguered human defenders. The ion cannon fired, releasing a blinding beam of energy that streaked into the Martian sky. The beam struck the lead Zarthani battleship, overloading its systems and causing a cascade of explosions across its hull. The disabled ship began to fall from orbit, forcing the remaining Zarthani fleet to break formation to avoid collision. The success of the ion cannon turned the tide of the battle. The Zarthani ground forces, seeing their orbital support decimated, began to retreat. Greg used the captured walker to provide covering fire for the human counterattack, pushing the invaders back beyond the colony's perimeter. As the immediate threat subsided, Greg returned to the lab to find Quinn and Dr. Lyra working frantically to stabilize the terraforming device. The energy discharge from the ion cannon had caused unexpected reactions within the machine, altering its fundamental properties. "Greg, you need to see this," Quinn said, her voice a mix of awe and concern. She pulled up a holographic display showing real-time data from Mars surface sensors. The device had begun to interface with Mars' ecosystem on a molecular level, accelerating the planet's dormant terraforming processes. The Martian atmosphere was thickening, and sensors detected a rapid increase in surface temperature and moisture levels. "We've inadvertently initiated a planet-wide transformation," Dr. Lyra explained, her antennae twitching with excitement and worry. "What should have taken centuries is occurring in a matter of hours." Before they could fully process this development, Colonel Reeves burst into the lab. Long-range scans show the remaining Zarthani fleet regrouping at the edge of the solar system, he reported grimly. "This reprieve is only temporary. The next attack will likely be even more ferocious." Greg looked at his team, Quinn, Dr. Lyra, and Zellera, each of them exhausted but determined. They faced a critical decision: how to control the accelerated terraforming of Mars while preparing for the inevitable Zarthani counterattack. As alarms continued to blare and the Martian landscape visibly shifted outside the colony's domes, Greg knew their next actions would determine not just the fate of Mars, but possibly the entire Sol system. The true test of their abilities and their newfound alliance was about to begin. The true test of their abilities and their newfound alliance was about to unfold before them. Greg turned to his team, his eyes reflecting the drive in theirs. "We need to act fast. Quinn, Dr. Lyra, focus on controlling the terraforming process. Zalera and I will coordinate our defenses." They quickly established a makeshift command center in the heart of Mars Colony Alpha. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing real-time data of the planet's rapidly changing surface. Quinn's fingers danced across the control panel, We're going to use the device to strengthen Mars' electromagnetic field. It should give us an edge against the Zarthani weapons." As they worked, the effects of their actions became immediately apparent. The Martian sky darkened momentarily before a shimmering curtain of energy rippled across it. Greg felt a sudden shift in his balance as the planet's gravity increased. "Gravity's approaching Earth levels," Dr. Lyra reported, her antennae twitching in excitement. "The core's rotation has accelerated beyond our initial calculations." Greg nodded, already moving to the next task. "Zalera, let's secure our perimeter. We'll use the tech from that Zarthani walker we captured." They raced outside, where the Martian landscape was transforming before their eyes. Red dust swirled in newly formed wind patterns as Greg and Zalera worked to deploy the salvaged Zarthani defenses. "These energy shields should buy us some time," Zalera said, her scales glistening with exertion as she calibrated a gravity manipulation field. Back in the command center, Quinn and Dr. Lyra coordinated with Martian scientists to stabilize the atmosphere. "We're deploying atmospheric regulators across the surface," Quinn explained, her voice tense with concentration. "The drones are moving faster than we anticipated, thanks to the new gravity." As hours passed, the changes to Mars accelerated. Vast ice deposits melted, forming rivers and lakes where only dust had been before. Greg found himself racing against time, using his enhanced strength to help construct emergency flood barriers around the colony. The water's rising too fast. A colonist shouted, struggling to hold back a surge of newly formed liquid. Greg braced himself against the barrier, his muscles straining. "Push harder. We can't let it breach the colony." As they worked to save the colony from flooding, an urgent communication came through from Earth. Colonel Reeves' voice crackled over the comm system. "The United Earth government is sending reinforcements. A fleet of warships is en route to Mars." The news brought a mixture of relief and apprehension. Greg knew they needed the support, but he worried about how Earth's intervention might complicate their already precarious situation. Zalera approached him, her alien features set in a grim expression. Long-range sensors show the Zarthani fleet re-entering the solar system. They've adapted their ships somehow. Greg's mind raced, considering their options. "We need to rethink our defense strategy. What if we use the terraforming device to tap into Mars' core? We could power a network of surface-to-space weapons." Quinn and Dr. Lyra immediately set to work modifying the device, while Zalera provided crucial insights into Zarthani's ship vulnerabilities. As they prepared for the coming battle, Greg found himself working closely with Zalera. In the midst of the chaos, he became acutely aware of her presence, the graceful efficiency of her movements, the intensity of her focus. Their eyes met as they calibrated a defense array, and Greg felt a surge of something beyond mere camaraderie. The Martian landscape continued its dramatic transformation. Where there had been barren red plains, now green shoots pushed through newly fertile soil. The rapid emergence of plant life created new challenges, forcing the team to adapt their plans constantly. Colonel Reeves interrupted their work with another urgent report. "We've detected an unknown object approaching from the outer solar system. It's not one of ours, and it doesn't match Zarthani signatures." This new development added another layer of complexity to their already overwhelming situation. Greg shared a look with his team, seeing his own mix of curiosity and apprehension reflected in their faces. As Earth's reinforcement fleet entered Mars orbit, Greg coordinated with the fleet commander, integrating their forces into the growing planetary defense network. The combined human fleet took up strategic positions around the red planet, their weapons primed and ready. In the command center, Greg stood with Quinn, Zalera, and Dr. Lyra, watching the long-range scanner displays. The first signs of the approaching Zarthani fleet appeared as tiny blips of light, growing larger with each passing moment. Greg took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He looked at his team, each of them focused and ready. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The scanner beeped urgently, drawing their attention. The Zarthani fleet had entered the outer reaches of the Martian atmosphere. The battle for Mars was about to begin. The Zarthani fleet emerged from the darkness of space, their ships breaking through Mars' newly formed atmosphere like meteors. The once red planet now shimmered with blues and greens, its surface a patchwork of rapidly forming oceans and sprouting vegetation. Greg's fingers flew across the holographic interface, activating the planetary defense system. Energy levels at maximum, he reported, channeling Mars' geothermal power now. The ground beneath them rumbled as massive cannons rose from the Martian soil, their barrels glowing with nearly unleashed energy. Quinn's voice crackled over the comms, surface-to-space weapons online. Targeting systems locked on the Zarthani fleet. Admiral Helena Walker's face appeared on the main view screen. Earth reinforcements in position, Greg. We're integrated with your planetary defenses and ready to engage on your mark. Greg nodded, his enhanced vision picking out individual Zarthani ships as they entered firing range. Copy that, Admiral. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the command center. Zalera's scales rippled with tension as she analyzed the incoming data. Greg, the unknown object we detected earlier, it's here. All eyes turned to the main display as a colossal spacecraft materialized at the edge of the Martian orbit. Its design was unlike anything they had ever seen, a blend of organic curves and crystalline structures that seemed to defy the laws of physics. By the stars, Dr. Lyra whispered, her antennae quivering in awe. The massive vessel positioned itself between Mars and the approaching Zarthani fleet. A shimmering energy field expanded from its hull, creating a barrier that separated the two forces. "We're receiving a transmission," Quinn announced, her fingers dancing across the controls. "It's broadcasting in multiple languages." A melodious voice filled the command center. "Attention, inhabitants of Mars and approaching Zarthani forces. This is a Galactic Council peacekeeping vessel, Harmony of Worlds. We request an immediate cessation of hostilities and propose diplomatic negotiations." Greg exchanged glances with his team, a mixture of relief and apprehension on their faces. "Patch me through," he said to Quinn. "This is Greg Stevens, representing Earth and its colonies on Mars. We're willing to negotiate." "Acknowledge, Greg Stevens," the voice replied. "The Galactic Council has designated a neutral space station orbiting Phobos as the site for peace talks. We request your presence as Earth's representative." As Greg prepared to respond, Quinn grabbed his arm, her face pale. "Greg, we have a problem. The terraforming device, it's caused a chain reaction in Mars' core. If we don't stabilize it soon, the entire planet could be at risk." Greg's mind raced, weighing the urgency of the negotiations against the imminent threat to Mars. "How long do we have?" "Days, maybe less," Quinn replied, her voice tight with worry. Greg took a deep breath, decision made. "All right, Quinn, you and Dr. Lyra focus on stabilizing the core. Zara, you're with me. We're heading to Phobos." As they boarded the shuttle, Greg felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. The fate of Mars, Earth, and possibly the entire solar system rested on the outcome of these negotiations. Zalera settled into the co-pilot seat, her presence a comforting constant amidst the chaos. As the shuttle broke free of Mars' atmosphere, Greg found himself acutely aware of her proximity. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the tension that had been building between them reached a crescendo. Without a word, they moved towards each other, their lips meeting in a passionate embrace. The kiss was electric, a release of pent-up emotions and shared experiences. But as quickly as it began, they pulled apart, the reality of their situation reasserting itself. "We should focus on the negotiations," Zalera said, her voice husky. Greg nodded, turning his attention back to piloting the shuttle. As they approached the Phobos station, he couldn't help but wonder how this newfound intimacy would complicate their already complex situation. The station loomed before them, a sleek structure of gleaming metal and pulsing energy fields. As they docked, Greg steeled himself for what lay ahead. The doors hissed open, revealing a towering figure waiting to greet them. "Welcome to Phobos Station," the being said, its voice resonant and captivating. "I am Ambassador Zilvara of the Elduran people, chief negotiator for the Galactic Council." Greg found himself staring at the ambassador, struck by their otherworldly beauty and regal bearing. Zilvara's form seemed to shimmer, their skin a tapestry of iridescent patterns that shifted with each movement. "Thank you for having us, Ambassador," Greg managed, forcing himself to focus. "I'm Greg Stevens, and this is Zalera, my advisor and representative of the Zarthani, who have allied with humans." Zilvara inclined their head gracefully. "The negotiations are about to begin. If you'll follow me, the representatives from Earth, Mars, the Zarthani government, and various Galactic Council member species await us." As they walked through the station's corridors, Greg's mind whirled with the enormity of what lay ahead. He had to present Earth's case, navigate interstellar politics, and somehow find a solution to save Mars, all while grappling with his feelings for Zalera and the undeniable attraction he felt towards the enigmatic Ambassador Zilvara. The doors to the negotiation chamber slid open, revealing a circular room filled with beings of various species. At the center stood a holographic projection of the solar system, Mars glowing an ominous red at its heart. Greg took his seat, acutely aware of the eyes upon him. As the negotiations began, he leaned forward, ready to fight for the future of humanity and their new home on Mars. Mars. As the doors closed behind them, Greg felt a surge of persistence. The fate of an entire planet now rested in their hands. The shuttle rocketed away from Phobos Station, its engine straining as Greg pushed them to maximum thrust. Through the view screen, Mars loomed larger with each passing moment, its surface a chaotic tapestry of reds, blues, and greens. "By the stars," Zalera breathed, her scales rippling with tension. "The terraforming process has accelerated beyond our predictions." Greg's enhanced vision picked out details invisible to normal human eyes. Massive fissures spread across the planet's surface like spiderwebs, and plumes of ash and steam billowed into the newly formed atmosphere. "We're going to have our work cut out for us," he said, his hands flying over the controls as he adjusted their trajectory to avoid a particularly violent eruption. As they entered the Martian atmosphere, the shuttle bucked and shuddered. Greg's muscles strained as he fought to keep them steady. Zalera's fingers danced across the sensor readouts, guiding them through the least turbulent air currents. They touched down with a bone-jarring thud on a newly formed plateau overlooking Valles Marineris. The shuttle's ramp had barely touched the ground before Greg and Zalera were sprinting out, equipment in hand. Quinn and Dr. Lyra were waiting for them, their faces etched with worry. "We've got the terraforming device reconfigured," Quinn shouted over the howling wind. "But we need to get it to the main geological hotspots immediately." Greg nodded, hefting a massive power converter onto his shoulder. His enhanced muscles barely registered the weight that would have crushed a normal human. "I'll handle the heavy lifting. Zalera, coordinate with your people. We need those energy redirection arrays up and running now." As Greg raced across the shifting landscape, he marveled at the planet's transformation. Lakes were forming before his eyes, steam rising where molten lava met newly formed bodies of water. In the distance, he could see the first hints of green, hardy Martian flora evolving at an unprecedented rate to colonize the fertile soil. He reached the first hotspot, a massive fissure spewing superheated gases into the air. With precision born of his enhancements, Greg positioned the power converter, linking it to the terraforming device's network. "First node online," he shouted into his comm. Zalera's voice crackled back. Excellent. The Zarthani arrays are powering up now. We're seeing a 20% reduction in core instability already. As Greg raced to the next hotspot, he saw Zalera in the distance, her lithe form darting between shimmering energy pylons. Her movements were a dance of efficiency and grace, and despite the dire circumstances, Greg felt a surge of admiration. Hours passed in a blur of activity. Greg's enhanced body pushed beyond normal human limits, carrying equipment, rescuing trapped colonists from collapsing structures, and shoring up defenses against the planet's violent restructuring. Finally, as the twin moons of Phobos and Deimos peeked over the horizon, Quinn's triumphant voice rang out over the comms. We've done it! The core is stabilizing, and the terraforming process is slowing to manageable levels. A cheer went up from the assembled teams, human Zarthani and Galactic Council representatives alike. Greg found himself grinning, the weight of their impossible task finally lifting from his shoulders. He turned to find Zalera standing beside him, her scales shimmering with exertion and triumph. Without a word, they moved towards each other, drawn by a force as inexorable as Mars' transformation. Their lips met in a passionate kiss, the physical connection a mirror to the newfound cooperation between their species. For a moment, the chaos around them faded away, leaving only the raw beauty of the transformed Martian landscape and the heat of their shared embrace. As they parted, Greg's comm unit chimed. Admiral Walker's face appeared, her expression a mix of relief and urgency. Excellent work down there, Greg. But we're not out of the woods yet. The Galactic Council is calling for an emergency summit on Earth. They want representatives from all involved parties, including you. Greg nodded, his mind already racing with the implications. Understood, Admiral. When do we leave? As soon as you can get a ship prepped. They're calling this the most significant event in human history since first contact. The entire galaxy is watching. As Greg signed off, he turned to Zalera. Looks like we're headed to Earth. Care to join me as a scientific advisor? Zalera's scales rippled with amusement. I wouldn't miss it for all the stars in the sky. As they boarded the Earthbound ship, joined by Quinn and her wealth of data on the terraforming process, Greg couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The ship's AI announced the detection of an unusual energy signature in the outer solar system, a previously unknown alien megastructure in the Kuiper Belt. Greg shared a look with Zalera and Quinn. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. As Earth grew larger in the view screen, Greg steeled himself for the challenges to come. The fate of not just two worlds, but potentially the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. Balance. The approaching blue and green sphere of Earth filled Greg with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. As they entered Earth's atmosphere, the ship's comm crackled to life. Incoming vessel. This is Terran Diplomatic Center, Geneva. You are cleared for landing on Platform Alpha 7. Greg guided the ship towards the sprawling complex below, its gleaming spires and domed structures a testament to humanity's rapid technological advancement. As they touched down, he could see the crowd gathered beyond the landing zone, a sea of faces eager to catch a glimpse of the returning heroes. Looks like we've drawn quite an audience, Quinn remarked, peering out the viewport. Greg nodded, steeling himself for what lay ahead. Let's not keep them waiting. As the ship's ramp lowered, Greg, Zalera, and Quinn were met by a delegation of Earth officials and alien representatives. Camera drones buzzed overhead, capturing every moment for the billions watching worldwide. A tall, distinguished man in a crisp suit stepped forward, extending his hand. Mr. Stevens, welcome back to Earth. I'm Marcus Blackwood, Terran Vanguard Liaison. If you'll follow me, there's a matter we need to discuss before the official proceedings begin. Greg exchanged glances with Zalera and Quinn. I'll catch up with you at the welcome ceremony, he said, before following Blackwood into the complex. They entered a secure room, its walls lined with holographic displays showing various star systems. Once the door sealed shut, Blackwood's demeanor changed, his expression growing serious. "Mr. Stevens, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels," Blackwood began, activating a holographic projection. Ancient artifacts materialized in the air between them, their design eerily similar to the terraforming technology on Mars. "These were discovered on Mars decades ago," Blackwood explained. "Our scientists believe they're of human origin, dating back thousands of years. The implications are staggering." Greg's mind reeled as he absorbed the information. "You're saying humans once possessed this level of technology? How is that possible?" Blackwood shook his head. "We don't know. Some cataclysmic event must have reset our civilization, erasing all knowledge of our past capabilities. The terraforming project on Mars may have inadvertently reawakened this dormant technology." As Greg processed this revelation, an alert chimed on Blackwood's comm device. "The welcome ceremony is about to begin. We'll continue this discussion later. Remember, this information is strictly confidential." Greg rejoined Zalera and Quinn, his mind still buzzing with the implications of what he'd learned. They were ushered into a massive amphitheater filled with delegates from dozens of alien species. As they took their places on the stage, Greg noticed Ambassador Zilvara watching him intently from the front row, her iridescent skin shimmering under the lights. The ceremony began with a series of presentations on the Mars terraforming project. Quinn delivered a detailed breakdown of the process, her holographic displays eliciting murmurs of awe from the assembled delegates. Zarthani representatives followed, explaining the intricacies of the energy manipulation techniques used to stabilize Mars' core. As Greg observed the reactions of the various alien species, he couldn't help but wonder how this newfound knowledge of humanity's past would impact their place in the galactic community. During a recess in the proceedings, Ambassador Zilvara approached Greg, her movements fluid and graceful. "Greg Stevens, I wonder if I might have a word with you in private? There are matters of great importance I believe we should discuss." Greg nodded, acutely aware of the diplomatic significance of such a meeting. "Of course, Ambassador. Lead the way." As they moved towards a secluded alcove, Greg's comm unit buzzed with an urgent message from Admiral Walker. He glanced at the screen, his heart rate quickening as he read the contents. The probe sent to investigate the Kuiper Belt megastructure had gone silent. Greg turned to Zilvara, torn between his duty and the potential diplomatic breakthrough. "I apologize, Ambassador, but an urgent matter has come up. Perhaps we could reschedule?" Zilvara's expression shifted, a mix of disappointment and understanding. "Of course, Greg. The weight of responsibility you bear is not lost on me. We will speak again soon." Rushing to the classified briefing room, Greg found Admiral Walker and a team of scientists huddled around a holographic display of the outer solar system. The Admiral's face was grim as she turned to address him. "Greg, the situation in the Kuiper Belt has escalated. The megastructure has begun emitting powerful energy signatures aimed at the inner solar system. Our scientists believe it might be an ancient terraforming device, far more advanced than anything we've encountered." As the implications sank in, Greg's mind raced with possibilities. Could this be connected to the artifacts Blackwood had shown him? Before he could voice his thoughts, an alert blared through the complex. "Energy surge detected on Mars." A technician shouted. "The terraforming device is reacting to the emissions from the Kuiper Belt structure." Greg locked eyes with Admiral Walker, the gravity of the situation clear. "I need to get back to Mars immediately." As he rushed from the briefing room, he nearly collided with Zalera. Seeing the urgency in his eyes, she fell into step beside him. "What's happening?" she asked. Greg quickly filled her in as they made their way to the research lab, where Quinn was monitoring the situation. The scene inside was one of controlled chaos, with scientists and technicians frantically working at various stations. Quinn looked up as they entered, her face pale. The terraforming device on Mars is going haywire. Its power output is increasing exponentially, and we're detecting similar energy surges on other planets and moons in the solar system. As the implications of Quinn's words sank in, Greg realized they were facing a crisis that could reshape the entire solar system. The technology that had saved Mars now threatened to unleash a cascading terraforming event across multiple worlds. Greg turned to Zalera and Quinn, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind. We need to get back to Mars now. Whatever's happening, the key to stopping it is there. As they rushed to prepare for their departure, Greg couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the cusp of uncovering a secret that would change humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. The true nature of the Kuiper Belt megastructure, its connection to the Martian terraforming device, and the implications of humanity's forgotten past all hung in the balance. With the fate of the solar system at stake, Greg, Zalera, and Quinn boarded their ship, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the engines roared to life, Greg knew that the next few hours would determine not just the future of Earth and its allies, but potentially the course of galactic history itself. As the ship hurtled towards Mars, Greg's mind raced with the implications of the unfolding crisis. The control panel in front of him lit up with urgent notifications, each one more alarming than the last. Energy readings from Mars are off the charts, Quinn reported, her fingers flying across the holographic display. The terraforming device is reacting to the Kuiper Belt emissions, amplifying its effects across the entire planet. Zalera leaned in, her scales shimmering with concern. We need to establish a coordinated response immediately. This goes beyond just Mars now. Greg nodded, his enhanced mind already formulating a plan. Quinn, contact the Terran Diplomatic Center. We need to set up a command post there. Zalera, reach out to your people. We'll need their expertise in energy manipulation. As they entered Mars' orbit, the view outside their viewport was chaotic. The planet's surface churned with activity, new land masses forming and dissolving in real time. Atmosphere swirled in vibrant hues, thickening by the second. My God, Quinn whispered. It's happening faster than we anticipated. Greg made a swift decision. Change of plans. We're heading back to Earth. We can't contain this from here. The journey back was tense, filled with frantic communications and data analysis. By the time they touched down at the Terran Diplomatic Center, a crisis response team was already assembling. Greg strode into the command center, Zalera and Quinn at his heels. The room buzzed with activity, screens displaying real-time feeds from across the solar system. Status report, Greg demanded, addressing the gathered officials and scientists. A harried-looking technician stepped forward. Sir, we're detecting similar energy signatures on multiple planets and moons. Venus, Europa, Titan. They're all showing signs of accelerated terraforming. Greg's mind raced with the implications. We need eyes on every affected body. Launch unmanned probes immediately. I want real-time data on each terraforming node. As the orders were carried out, Greg turned to Quinn. I need you to lead the analysis team. Find out how these nodes are connected and if there's a way to deactivate them. Quinn nodded, already moving towards a cluster of scientists huddled around a complex holographic model of the solar system. Zalera approached, her expression grim. I've been in contact with our science council. We believe we can adapt our energy manipulation techniques to dampen the terraforming effects, at least temporarily. Do it, Greg said. Work with our engineers to modify our satellite network. We need a solar system-wide dampening field as soon as possible. As Zalera left to coordinate with the Joint Humans-Arthani team, Greg felt a presence at his side. He turned to find Ambassador Zilvara, her iridescent skin reflecting the chaotic displays around them. "Greg Stevens," she said, her voice low and urgent. "There's something you need to know. The Eldurans have encountered structures like the one in the Kuiper Belt before." Greg's eyes widened. "What can you tell me?" "Not here," Zilvara replied, glancing around the busy command center. "But we have a science vessel that might be able to interface with the ancient systems. I offer its services to your efforts." Greg nodded, grateful for the assistance. "Thank you, Ambassador. Please, have your ship enter the system immediately." As Zilvara left to make arrangements, Greg's attention was drawn to a flashing alert on the main display. The probes were sending back their first batch of data. "The terraforming nodes," a scientist called out, her voice filled with awe and fear. "They're not just reshaping the planets and moons. They're altering their orbits." The implications hit Greg like a physical blow. If the orbits of celestial bodies were changing, the entire stability of the solar system was at risk. He turned to address the room, his voice cutting through the rising panic. "Listen up. We have a plan, and we're going to execute it. Quinn, I need your analysis team to work double time. Zalera's dampening field is our best shot at buying time." As the room erupted into renewed activity, Greg felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He moved to a quiet corner, activating his comm unit. "Admiral Walker," he said as the connection established, "I need authorization for our experimental Humans-Arthani hybrid ships. We're going to take a closer look at that Kuiper Belt structure." The Admiral's reply was immediate. "Granted, but Greg, be careful out there. We can't afford to lose you." Greg ended the call, his mind already racing ahead to the next steps. The fate of the solar system hung in the balance, and he knew that the decisions made in the next few hours would shape the future of humanity and its place in the galaxy. As he rejoined the bustling command center, Greg caught sight of Zalera coordinating with the engineering team. Their eyes met across the room, a silent understanding passing between them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The Kuiper Belt megastructure loomed in Greg's mind, a colossal mystery waiting to be unraveled. As he prepared for the most crucial mission of his life, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of uncovering secrets that would redefine humanity's understanding of its own history and its place in the cosmos. Universe. Greg took a deep breath, steeling himself for the monumental task ahead. The fate of the solar system hung in the balance, and he knew that the next few hours would determine the course of human history. "Admiral Walker," Greg said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him, "I'm proceeding with the plan to take control of the terraforming network. It's our best chance to stabilize the entire solar system." The Admiral's holographic image flickered with concern. "Understood, Greg. But what about the situation on Earth?" Greg's eyes sharp. "I know the risks, but if we don't act now, there might not be an Earth to return to. Quinn, can you handle things here?" Quinn nodded, her eyes reflecting the gravity of the situation. "I'll coordinate with Admiral Walker and the Galactic Council. We'll do everything we can to keep Earth stable." With a quick nod to Zalera, Greg made his way to the docking bay where the Elduran ship waited. The sleek vessel hummed with barely suppressed energy, its hull shimmering with an otherworldly iridescence. As they boarded, Ambassador Zilvara approached. "Our scientists have prepared the interface systems. We're ready when you are." The journey to the Kuiper Belt was tense, filled with last-minute preparations and data analysis. Greg and Zalera worked in tandem, their movements synchronized as they readied themselves for the complex task ahead. As they neared the massive structure, its true scale became apparent. The megastructure dwarfed their ship, its intricate patterns pulsing with ancient power. "Initiating the interface sequence," Zalera announced, her claws dancing across the holographic controls. The ship shuddered as it connected with the megastructure. Data flooded their systems, a torrent of information that threatened to overwhelm their processors. Greg's enhanced mind raced to keep up, sifting through the complex algorithms and command structures. "It's more than just a terraforming device," he muttered. "It's a system-wide transformation network." As they worked to establish control, reports flooded in from across the solar system. Venus's toxic atmosphere began to clear, revealing glimpses of a rocky surface ripe for transformation. The icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn cracked, exposing vast underground oceans. "Greg, we're getting reports from Earth." Quinn's voice crackled over the comms. "Several nations have launched operations to seize control of the terraforming nodes. We've got skirmishes breaking out in orbit and on the surface." Greg's hands clenched into fists. "Do what you can to contain the situation. We need more time." Hours passed as Greg and Zalera delved deeper into the megastructure systems. Their minds merged with the ancient technology, gaining insights into its purpose and function. "It's designed to create habitable worlds across entire star systems," Zalera said, her voice filled with awe. "But it only activates when the local species reaches a certain level of technological advancement." With this newfound understanding, they began to fine-tune the terraforming process. The rate of change on Earth slowed, buying precious time for Quinn and Admiral Walker to manage the crisis. Meanwhile, Mars's transformation accelerated, its barren surface rapidly becoming a lush, habitable world. As they worked to halt the changes to the outer planets, they encountered unexpected resistance. The megastructure's programming insisted on a minimum number of habitable worlds in each system it transformed. Greg made a split-second decision. "We'll direct the transformation to select moons and planets. Europa for aquatic life, Titan for methane-based organisms, and we'll reshape some asteroids into space habitats." As the solar system underwent this controlled metamorphosis, a new energy signature emanated from the sun. The megastructure had begun to alter the star itself, stabilizing its output and extending its lifespan by billions of years. Suddenly, long-range sensors blared a warning. A massive fleet of unknown vessels had entered the outer solar system, their technology far beyond anything they had encountered before. Greg and Zalera exchanged a look of mingled excitement and apprehension. Were these the original creators of the megastructure, or another civilization drawn to the newly transformed star system? As the unknown fleet approached, Greg knew that humanity stood on the brink of a first contact scenario that would redefine their place in the galaxy. The next few moments would shape the future of not just Earth, but the entire transformed solar system. With the terraforming network stabilized and the immediate crisis averted, Greg turned his attention to this new development. The unknown ships loomed larger on their sensors, their intentions yet to be revealed. Whatever came next, Greg knew that the adventure was far from finished. The unknown fleet drew closer, its massive ships dwarfing even the impressive megastructure they had just interfaced with. "We need to return to Earth immediately," Greg said, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Whatever's coming, we need to face it united." Zalera nodded, her scales shimmering with anticipation. "I'll inform the Elduran crew. We'll make best speed back to the Terran Diplomatic Center." As they raced back to Earth, Greg coordinated with Admiral Walker and Quinn, ensuring all necessary preparations were in place for a potential first contact scenario. The journey seemed to stretch on forever, each moment filled with the weight of impending change. Finally, the familiar blue marble of Earth came into view. The Elduran ship descended through the atmosphere, touching down at the Terran Diplomatic Center amidst a sea of anxious faces. Officials, scientists, and civilians alike had gathered, their eyes fixed on the sky. Greg and Zalera disembarked, immediately swept into a whirlwind of activity. They barely had time to catch their breath before a commotion rippled through the crowd. All eyes turned upward as a single, sleek vessel detached from the massive fleet and approached Earth. The ship's design was unlike anything they had ever seen. its hull seeming to shimmer and shift as if it were made of liquid metal. It came to a halt in low orbit, hovering silently above the diplomatic center. Suddenly, a beam of light erupted from the vessel, projecting a holographic message that filled the sky. Strange, intricate symbols danced and shifted, defying easy interpretation. The Elduran technology struggled to make sense of the ancient language. For several tense moments, the assembled crowd held its collective breath. Then, as if by magic, the symbols began to willpower themselves into recognizable text. "We are the precursors," the message read, "creators of the Galactic Seeding Initiative. We have returned to evaluate the fruits of our labor." A hushed murmur swept through the crowd. Greg felt a mix of excitement and apprehension course through him. This was it, the moment that would define humanity's place in the cosmos. Admiral Walker approached, his face a mask of controlled tension. "Greg, as our most experienced representative in interspecies diplomacy, we need you to lead our delegation. Are you prepared for this?" Greg nodded, his enhanced mind already formulating potential scenarios and responses. "I'm ready, Admiral. We've come too far to falter now." As if in response to their readiness, another beam of light shot down from the precursor ship, this time materializing into a solid platform. It was clear, an invitation. Greg turned to Zalera, Quinn, and a select group of Earth's top officials. "This is it. Let's make history." They stepped onto the platform, which immediately began to ascend towards the precursor ship. As they rose higher, the vastness of Earth spread out beneath them, a stark reminder of what was at stake. The interior of the precursor ship was a marvel of advanced technology, with corridors that seemed to shift and change as they walked. They were led to a vast chamber, its walls adorned with what appeared to be star maps of unimaginable scale. And there, waiting for them, were the precursors themselves. Greg's breath caught in his throat. The beings before them were tall and ethereal, their bodies seeming to glow from within. Their skin was translucent, pulsing with patterns of light that hinted at incomprehensible complexity. One of the precursors stepped forward, its movements fluid and graceful. When it spoke, the words seemed to form directly in Greg's mind. "I am Archon Zyn," the being said, its mental voice resonating with ancient wisdom. "We welcome you, children of Earth and beyond. Your activation of the Sol System's megastructure has exceeded our expectations, triggering our return from a distant galaxy." Greg stepped forward, bowing slightly in respect. "We are honored by your presence, Archon Zyn. I am Greg Stevens, representing Earth and our allies in this historic moment." Archon Zyn's form shimmered, a gesture Greg interpreted as approval. "Your cooperation with other species in managing the terraforming process is commendable. This collaboration was a key goal of our initiative." The Archon's gaze swept over the assembled delegates, lingering on each in turn. "We have returned not only to observe but to evaluate. The activation of the megastructure signals that your civilizations have reached a crucial stage of development. It is time to assess your potential and determine your readiness for the next phase of galactic citizenship." Greg felt a mix of pride and trepidation at these words. "We are prepared to demonstrate our capabilities, Archon Zyn. How will this evaluation be conducted?" The precursor's form pulsed with vibrant colors. "We have prepared a series of trials, physical, mental, and ethical challenges that will test a full spectrum of your abilities. These trials will begin immediately and will involve representatives from all species present in your system." As Archon Zyn spoke, holographic displays materialized around the chamber, showcasing complex simulations and intricate puzzles. It was clear that the challenges ahead would push them to their limits. Greg turned to his companions, seeing grit reflected in their eyes. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. As the first trial began to take shape before them, Greg steeled himself for the challenges that would determine the future of humanity and its place among the stars.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.